Suppose, Lord Russell, this film were to be looked at by our descendants, like a Dead Sea Scroll in 1,000 years' time. What would you think it's worth telling that generation about the life you've lived and the lessons you've learned from it?
I should like to say two things. One intellectual and one moral. The intellectual thing I should want to say to them is this. When you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out. Never let yourself be diverted either by what you would wish to believe or by what you think could have beneficent social effects if it were believed. But look only and solely at what are the facts. That is the intellectual thing that I should wish to say. The moral thing I should wish to say to them is very simple. I should say, love is wise, hatred is foolish. In this world, which is getting more and more closely interconnected, we have to learn to tolerate each other. We have to learn to put up with the fact that some people say things that we don't like. We can only live together in that way. And if we are to live together and not die together, we must learn a kind of charity and a kind of tolerance, which is absolutely vital to the continuation of human life on this planet.
Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode, live episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name is Luis Jimenez. I'm the host and creator of the show. Welcome. So happy you guys are here. We got a lot of news to cover today. Just got a text from Jane. She will not be joining us. She's got, I don't want to spill her beans, but oh man, she was just here. And so it's just going to be me, Nick, and Rather today. Still should be a killer show. We got a ton to talk about. So let's get into it, of course. But before we do, of course, we got to pay some bills. There's a couple things. First, I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat, everyone who's here in the show. We got a light audience right now, but I'm sure it'll trickle in as the show goes on, as it always does. Yesterday's show with Brandon Fugel is insane. How many people are watching that episode? So if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. But want to say hello to Mark. Want to say hello to Awaiting Aliens, Jordan Mack, Eventside, Pat Calabria, Mostly Space, Matthew Wright. Thank you all for being here. Ryan Sprague in the house. What's up, guys? Also, want to say thank you to KGRADB and our producer today, Chanel, who's filling in for Bill. So thank you behind the scenes. Bill's in Utah doing some fun things. So he'll be back next week. Want to remind you guys that this show will be available on iTunes, Spotify, right after the show. We upload it every day. Well, not every day. Well, every time we have a show. So leave us a rating review. It goes a very long way. Appreciate it. And want to say thank you to the Patreon members, the YouTube members, the super chatters, and the moderators in the chat. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being Patreons and committing the almighty dollar to our show. We are a public access channel. We're supported by viewers like you. So we truly appreciate anytime you guys can donate to the show. It helps a lot. But if you can't, don't worry about it. There's no paywall here. Everything is free. So no early access, no special access. Everything is free. So enjoy. All we ask is that you leave a like, share, subscribe. It goes a very long way to helping the show grow. We truly appreciate it. And yeah, that's it. Let's get into it. Let's bring in our co-host, Rather Be Squidding.
Hey, Luke.
What's shaking, buddy?
Not too much. Yeah, nice sunny day out here in Seattle, and looking forward to talking some UFOs. A lot of interesting stuff has been happening.
Ooh, man. Yeah, you sent me the, I forgot that the Basement Office episode dropped today, so we'll be talking about that. I know Stephen Greenstreet does a lightning rod, but you cannot deny his talent. He knows how to tell a story and piece together, difficult questions, but
for sure.
Anyway, We'll talk. We'll get into it. We also we're going to break down the Hudson Valley UFO Flap with Nick Coffin-Callis, and maybe he'll stick around for hour 2 because we just lost Jane. We just lost Jane, and I actually want to get his opinion on the AARO, the new AARO office, and which, if you guys don't
All-domain,
know, All-domain Anomaly Resolution Office. There was a lot. You know what I loved about this new office coming out? John Greenwald did a video about it yesterday. He dropped a video about it. And the thing that I loved about it, because it made me feel less stupid, was he was even confused about what office took over what. Because we talked about it the other day, and we're like, oh yeah, which one? But I think I got it now. So ATIP was taken over by UAPTF. AOI MSG was a place card between UAPTF and AARO. I think ASRO was just something that they flirted with and quickly changed to AOI MSG. Went to AARO, and now AARO is the new office with the new director, with a Twitter account. So there's a lot that's going along with this. We're gonna cover every aspect of it. So stick around. It's gonna be a fun show. But let's bring in our guest, shall we?
Let's do it.
So Nick's been on the show before, and he covered the Michigan UFO Flap, right? Is that what they call it? I'm always.
I don't know if that was a flap or just one incident. But
just one incident, but it was a really well documented incident from multiple. It was triangulated phone calls from different counties, recorded phone calls with police, and also recorded phone calls between the airport and I believe the National Weather Service, or it was the police department and the National Weather Service. So it was a really killer documented case. Nick broke it down beautifully on his channel, Invisible Night School on YouTube, which I've got the link for that in the description below. And I've also got the link for his newest article. But the thing that I loved how he ended this article, and I feel like this is how we have to introduce him forever now. Without further ado, Mr. Nick Coffin-Callis, the dubious layman. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, I am a dubious layman.
Yeah. Welcome back to the show. We're doing well. What's shaking?
Not much. Working in the heat and talking UFOs now.
Well, let's kick it off with the dubious layman, because I thought there was an interesting story behind this, and it also kind of leads into this new chapter of Invisible Night School. And I wanted to highlight that because I thought it was really cool. You guys had a Twitter space the other night, and I was like, finally, these conversations are happening, and nobody's like getting mad at these conversations. So it was. I just felt like it was a really good example of how conversations should go. But yeah, if you can tell us a little bit about what Invisible Night School is sort of evolving into.
Yeah. So it's no longer just me anymore. It's a small consortium of lay researchers like myself and scholars who are analytically exploring UFOs and high strangeness and the cultural and social implications of the phenomenon. So we're kind of getting together in a group and co-producing content. We'll be releasing things, I think, hopefully we're aiming for weekly on the new site, theinvisiblenightschool.com, as well as hosting some spaces and maybe trying to do some live streams in the future. And we're going to kind of create salon-style chats where we talk. Sometimes we'll have a guest. We're trying to get a couple guests with us with interesting viewpoints. And then we always want to open it up for questions in the end, because we want to engage, with all perspectives of this community, because they all have different, good viewpoints, and they bring something unique from each perspective. I realized that my first article is debunking, right? But I don't really want it to come across that way, because beyond what we've kind of figured out happened in this case, there's still a handful of witnesses that had really interesting experiences. And I don't think that they're lying or making that up. I will say that there may be a touch of embellishment from the filter of Phil Imbrogno, one of the main investigators. Mm-hmm. But regardless of that, on each of these nights, you did have people having kind of remarkable experiences, and the why there is what's interesting to me, because you have these situations, like in this case, where they are seeing a formation of planes, but that's not what they're experiencing at all.
Spoiler alert! If you were wondering what the Hudson UFO flap was, spoiler alert.
Well, I mean,
Jeez,
it was from the 80s. You gotta
No, I'm kidding. No, it's an old case, but it's one that comes back a lot.
Yeah, it does.
Like, it comes back in the conversation a lot.
Actually, the impetus of this consortium was a friend of the show, Jazz Shaw, released an article on Hudson Valley just a week ago, I think.
Yeah.
And it kind of spawned this idea because, if you recall, he just worked on the Lake Michigan case when I was too. So it's kind of a strange coincidence. And then my buddy Craig kind of influenced me. He's like, well, you write it up. Because I had some issues with his article, to be honest. Most blogs you read or stories you hear about the Hudson Valley, there's always one small line referring to the planes as ultralights, and it's kind of dismissed, whether that be, oh, ultralights can't fly at night with those lighting formations and it's illegal, or just the word ultralight itself. And there's a lot of words in this community that are equivocal. Not everybody's on the same page with the usage and the meaning, like UFO itself. One person says UFO, another person has a different meaning of it. So ultralights, and this is kind of a meme among pilots, I found out, that journalists will refer to anything with a single engine down to a hang glider as an ultralight. But these were Cessnas. They're Cessna 140s, 150s, Skyhawks.
Which are ultralight planes. I mean, they are light planes.
They are light planes, but I mean, that's like a...
Yeah.
But it's something you build yourself kind of thing, right?
Right, because you would consider that, ultralight's kind of a hang glider with a lawnmower and a big fan on the back of it.
Right.
Technically, I think. Don't ask me.
I mean, when you say ultralight, it definitely does conjure something not FAA sort of.
Right, exactly. And I mean, and I'll say this, and this kind of came up in our space too, in regards to FAA regulations on strobe lights. FAA may have regulations, but that doesn't mean people are following them. Because they called themselves the Martian. This group of stunt pilots out of Stormville, they allegedly were rigging up external extra lighting on their planes because they were playing up this whole idea. But I go into this a little bit in the article, but if you search the newspapers for the entire decade of the 80s, sightings of this thing were happening all the time.
Yeah.
Like outside of that window of 1983 to 1987 that you normally hear and you read about in Night Siege. People were always seeing this, and it was always those guys. They started out slow at first, but once this kind of cultural meme of the boomerang UFO took place, they played it up quite a bit. At their airport, they had a UFO burger on the menu because of this. They would bring their girlfriends in and say, like, hey, you're going to see a UFO tonight. And they would come in and land. But what's interesting about this, and this doesn't get talked about as much, is that right from the get-go, the newspapers of the area were solving this case immediately. In almost every single one, you see it's always at least a paragraph, but state troopers get so many calls about this thing, because I'm sure it did look really strange. State troopers get a lot of calls. They'd see the lights and they'd follow them to that Stormville airport and see them landing. But the very beginning of the story, this is being reported. But you'll notice that in most articles, there's a March 24th article called 100C Claim to See UFO. That's the article that gets mentioned most, but that's one of the only ones that doesn't mention the pilot angle or the police following back. I thought that was really interesting. And a lot of it is copied and pasted from blogs and stuff like that. But even in Jazz's article, that's one of the highlighted articles. But that seemed to actually have the least amount of detail.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who are reporting this, right? Was it dozens or hundreds or thousands?
These are rough estimates that I'm taking from Night Siege. So like I said, take all that information with a grain of salt, but they estimated about 5,000 people saw this over the course of a decade, mind you. Coincidentally, it always happened on Thursday nights. Well, in the beginning, I think into 84, they started flying on the weekends occasionally too. But yeah, summer, Thursday nights between like 8 to 10 p.m. roughly. It was predictable, which is how investigator Dick Rull from AARO, who I found out recently passed away while I was researching this case.
Oh.
It was so predictable. He was able to stake out the airport, and he saw them land and got a picture of one of the tail IDs of the plane, which I published in the article. It's registered to someone else now. You can look that up, but don't harass that guy. He had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But it was so regular, and every year so regular, that people, even Imbrogno himself, staked out the airport and found these people. So it's really undeniable at that point. Some, including Imbrogno and maybe Dolan, make the case that the pilots were flying and the boomerang were flying in the same area, but that's a pretty big coincidence. And if you're going to make that case, you got your work cut out for you, because that's a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. But like I said, having said all that, I do believe the witness accounts. That is their interpretation,
Right.
because I don't want to dismiss witness accounts, but we have to kind of understand that witness testimony can only speak to their interpretation of the event, not what really happened. You might get clear details from that, but it is still their interpretation.
Well, there was one witness that you had in here who was like, "Oh, there's no way a Cessna can fly like that." And when I read that in the article, I was like, "Man, now that I think of it, I used to be at Orange Bowl games as a kid, and they would have Cessnas dragging these massive banners of advertising."
Yes.
And on windy days, they would turn into the wind, and these planes would literally hover.
Yeah, they'd hang
above
there.
the state. They'd hang there, and I remember me and my sister would be like, "Man, it feels like it's going to fall out of the sky any second." And it would hover there for 10, 12 minutes before it finally beat the current and then made the turn back around.
Yeah, depending on the perspective you're looking at them, how far away, if they're flying into the wind.
Yeah.
Sparky, who's part of the Invisible Night School, she's a pilot in training who flies a Cessna herself. She's commenting there. She talks about putting the engines too, and it makes it relatively silent and very slow. I think you can get down to about 50 miles per hour if you cut the engines and are flying in formation. And you got to think that these guys at this point know that they're emulating a UFO. They're playing this up. So they'll fly in formation, cut their engines, and fly into a wind. It looks like a hovering boomerang.
May I ask? I'm sorry, maybe this is the same question you have. My question is, how the hell did this get so out of control? Like, how soon did these investigators figure out, oh, this is just a bunch of guys in airplanes playing games? Look at this. They got a burger on the menu called the UFO. Are you kidding me?
It's so hard to say. With Imbrogno, he was surely pushing a narrative, but Hynek was involved. This is one of the last cases he was involved with before he passed away. The book was released after his death, so Imbrogno had his hands in that. But and Hynek said it himself. He said in most cases with mass sightings, it turns out to be a mundane explanation, but no one can come up with one. I don't know if they were just ignoring it or just didn't want it to be true. But this is all this is the 80s, so this is all word of mouth. Imbrogno is going and investigating all these people. They set up a UFO conference that I think it was in 84, maybe it was 83, and people just flocked to it. It was big. It was a meme, essentially, a proto meme.
But how long was it before before they figured it out? Before the flap became sort of within the zeitgeist of that area? How long did it take them to figure out? And then how long was this story propagated as this, their diamond in the rough event?
Right. Well, it depends on who you ask, right? Because like I said, the papers figured it out immediately. The investigators, I think a year into it, knew about the pilots, surely. Dick Roll.
So pretty quickly.
Yes, absolutely. The police, the state police knew about it.
So how the hell did this... How did this bubble up into this huge, this is like serious UFO lore, the Hudson Valley.
It was on an old Unsolved Mysteries, which I think is how I first heard about it. It's a cool story, and people's want to believe. Their need to believe kind of pushes it. Because, you can make the argument like, oh, I know what I saw. I didn't see planes. Even though if you actually look at a lot of the newspapers, half of the witnesses are saying that they actually saw the bodies of the airplanes. You know what I mean? Cops.
Yeah.
this. Lots of eyewitnesses said this. So I don't know. And that's an interesting part of it too. Why did it persist? And to be honest, like Monique O'Driscoll, Linda Nicoletti, what was his name? Dennis Sant, all these people, they had these really compelling stories that they told. And those were also printed in the newspapers and in Night Siege, where they're on the highway and they're seeing this thing hovering over traffic and shooting a spotlight down, which was a landing light on the plane. Yeah. But I mean, from their perspective, they're seeing something otherworldly. They had claims that actually multiple people, according to the book, again, like I said, take it with a grain of salt, multiple people claimed to have a psychic connection with this thing, where they're looking at the object and they say, they think to themselves, I want to see it better. And they say it turns and starts coming towards them. Did the group of planes do that? Possibly. But there seems to be kind of a step missing that we don't understand, where you have what's happening and you have what people are interpreting, and they're different. And I think that's interesting. And that makes this case still a mystery in my book. Even though we know what was flying around in the skies, we don't know how these witnesses had these experiences. I think that part's really interesting. Lately, me and some of the other people from the Invisible Night School, we've been reading Young and David Halperin's book, Intimate Alien, that talks kind of about like the unconscious is not communicating, but giving us these symbols, these archetypal symbols that belong in the collective unconscious. I think that might be a little too far, but it's a stressful event. It's causing you to kind of embellish maybe internally these things. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious. You kind of mentioned that the pilots were kind of, in on this, playing it up, and maybe even kind of hoaxing a little. Do you have any sense for, when that started? Was that their original intention, do you think? Or was it, after some newspaper articles, they started kind of,
I would like to say that they didn't intend it to be a hoax at first. They were just formation flying, which it's just a group of pilots in New York. A lot of people say upstate New York. I don't believe it's upstate, but well off. They own planes and they're doing night flying. But then once the newspapers started running with it, they played it up. And the fact that the presses keep running with it is only encouraging to them, I imagine. I can put myself in their minds. Yeah, it kind of sounds funny.
And I'm also curious, like, what role, if any, do you think like the stigma played on this? Do you think that people were stigmatized when they came out and were corrected by the newspapers saying that it was airplanes, or do you think that maybe it even potentially suppressed some of the reporting? Or I'm curious if you think it played any role.
By the time Heineken and Brogner were there and they're holding the conference, I don't think so. I think they were probably encouraged at that point. Maybe in the beginning, I know that a lot of them did in the paper say, I know what I saw and it wasn't planes. I'm not a kook. But I think I didn't see that in the reporting. The reporting did take it seriously. They offered the suggestion of the planes, but they were saying, it still doesn't maybe explain this person's account or this person's account. I thought it was a rare period where the media was taking it seriously, and I think reporting objectively, which I don't believe we see now, and I don't believe we saw, in the early stages of ufology, 40s and 50s. So I think it was actually a good period for the media covering UFOs.
So then, looking at this case, do you go back to say like something you broke down before, like that Michigan UFO sighting, and go, oh man, maybe these guys were just seeing some Cessnas similar to this, or is that in a different category just because of the circumstances and who's involved in that particular case?
The Lake Michigan case is still a mystery to me, and there are other historical cases that are mysteries to me, from my opinion. The way the witnesses described what they were seeing was interesting to me. They a lot of them used, like they said, a string of Christmas lights or a wreath up in the sky that was rotating, but the lights would shoot off. And like you said in the beginning, there were multiple independent people seeing this at the same time. And what I really appreciate about it is we get their testimony in real time. So you don't have memories changing over time. And as you recall, you add to them and you exaggerate them. This is all testimony as is, like live. So I think that their descriptions would be fairly accurate. I will say that we still haven't established the on-the-ground visual sightings and the radar sightings at the same time in that case, and that's something I would like to do. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
But as it stands now, I don't have enough evidence or confidence to say that those were the same things, though they did happen in the same night, kind of sequentially. I mean, that is mysterious, because if it was maybe a hot air balloon with lights on it, that wouldn't account for the radar returns. Because Jack, the radar operator, said that these were brighter than like a commercial airliner on his radar. So that's interesting. And he feels very confident that it wasn't anomalous propagation or what do they call it, ground clutter, because he would angle the radar up. That's how you clear ground clutter from a radar. And also these things were jumping in elevation the entire. He thought they were putting on a show for him, which is interesting. That kind of idea pops up a lot in cases, including Hudson Valley. When I was first looking into Hudson Valley, I was like, oh, wow, here's a connection. This is really interesting. Turned out to be something different. But
they were going to putting on a show, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but they were just humans.
Sure. But I mean, you look at a lot of UFO cases, they seem to be trying to get attention. They demand attention for you, and they can't possibly exist. So it's the ultimate mystery. And each case
you can't have
mystery.
You can't have UFOs without attention, right?
Right. Exactly. Really, they demand.
They go together. But like, here's what I find interesting is that in the Lake Michigan case, there was recordings.
Right.
Recordings from concern. Like, I mean, we talked about this, the idea of somebody going, oh my God, I see something in the sky. This is totally abnormal. I guess I'll call the police and dial 911 and report this.
I'm happy.
And a ton of people did it, right? And it was awesome. Yeah. To go back and listen to those calls. They're amazing.
Yeah, I have the full tape on my YouTube channel, and it's really worth listening to. It'll like kill your ears though. It's really loud.
Yeah, just lower the volume on it.
But
well, what I was gonna say, that didn't really happen with Hudson Valley though, right?
No, they were calling the police. That's what kind of drove these state troopers to go out, find these lights that people were seeing, and then follow them back to the airport.
But we didn't get. I guess there's no recordings. No recordings. But I'm assuming that's because the police department eventually figured out once they sent troopers. Mm-hmm. Oh, they're just planes.
Yeah, I would love to hear that if that existed.
That would be great, but but what I am curious about, and I wonder if anybody's done any research on this, because it was happening at a weekly basis, means new waves of people were seeing it, which then adds to the lore in the community. But I'm curious to know is if the police department was aware. Okay, hey, every Thursday from this time to this time, you're going to get a ration of calls. Just tell them exactly what it is. It's planes flying from here to here. And I'm curious. I mean, they had to have done that, right?
I imagine so, yeah. It must have been known between them and among all the counties, because this did involve multiple counties in New York and a couple of the western Connecticut counties too. All along the Hudson Valley River, though, from Stormville, which is just north of that. And they would fly down in a loop. So I would imagine so. It became regular. And I think that's how
I'm just shocked we haven't gotten anybody on video from one of those police departments going, oh, yeah. From every Thursday from this year to this year. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, we used to tell the blah, 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 whatever. But that would be just a great piece of a great piece of the puzzle.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To kill the BS aspect of the story, which I mean, at the end of the day, like, and God, why did I use that? I hate that phrase, but it is solved, right? Like it's a solved case, which is a good thing.
Yes. Well, to an extent it's solved.
Right.
I believe that everyone saw planes. Like I said, there is still the mysterious aspect of why these people have these experiences when they see these things. Cause it's not, just that I'll leave it at that. But there's still mysterious aspects to it, and that's fine, and we can look into that too. But
I wonder if there's mysterious. I wonder if we're getting witness testimony like, oh, I felt like I called it over and it came over, but like, hey, did we go into that person's house and get an idea of who these people are that are telling us this version of their story? You know, I like, how deep did they go on those witnesses? Was it just simply, all right, let me knock on the door, let me get your testimony, all right, I'm out of here, take it easy?
They seemed like competent people. I mean, they were warehouse foremen and retired police and active police. Police officers saw it on duty, said it flew over a car. Other police officers saw it and thought it was planes. That's what you see in every grouping of witnesses they talk to. You have some arguing like, no, those were planes. I recognize them. I heard them. So you hear the description of these sightings a lot, and they'll say it's silent, but a good majority of them heard a humming or droning sound, which Cessnas in the sky, even with their engines cut, you do hear something. Plus, you don't know how far away these things are. You hear a lot of witness descriptions talking about how large something is and how far away it is at night. You have lights in the sky. I don't really know how you're determining these sizes or these dimensions or these distances. You know what I mean? So there are some tricks of the eye that are playing into that, like the hovering, like you were mentioning at the air show. Right. But I mean, no, these people were just normal people. I mean, the only person who's lying in this case is Phil Imbrogno, and it's about his credentials.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see if you see something mysterious, it might almost be kind of like a mental placebo effect, right? Where you experience something that is mysterious, you're in that kind of mindset, and you
absolutely,
make these
especially if it's getting
potentially.
You're hearing about it in all the newspapers. People are talking. Like I said, it's a proto meme. So everyone's talking about this luminous boomerang craft flying. You hear this, you prime yourself. I don't know if you guys watch the Skinwalker show, but if you ever watched ghost hunting shows.
Wait, you don't know if we watched the Skinwalker show?
No, I do know you watched that.
Okay, all right. I was like, wait a second.
Maybe they do it on this show. But EVPs, you'll notice anytime they play an EVP on a ghost show, they'll have subtitles at the bottom.
Yes.
If you close your eyes and listen to those, unintelligible. You're kind of priming yourself. I agree. You're kind of focusing your observations into a package to kind of make it fit. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that these things apply to any other UFO case. You know, you see that reaction a lot, especially to debunk a case. Oh, you're saying all UFOs are drones. Oh, you're saying all UFOs are formations of Cessnas. No, I'm not. Right. And like I said, I'm not dismissing any of these witnesses' experiences either. I think those are the most interesting part of the case, honestly. But I feel like I should be clear here, because I've noticed that the skeptical persuasion riles people up a little bit. But I mean, and that's not all we're doing with the Invisible Night School either. We've got a lot of people's perspectives coming in. I know you were on that Spaces, but we've got Campbell, who's heavily researching the ball lightning and aerial plasma aspect of this. He's very convinced of that. I mean, we've got it coming from different perspectives, and I really value that. And that's why I kind of wanted to take what I had created and bring it out into a consortium, because it's not just all me and not just all my perspective, you know?
Yeah. Coming from the spectacle perspective, though, don't you think it's at least a little bit of a kind of an indictment of, UFO culture and media, that they will keep on reporting this case as if it is, not solved? And if they're doing that with this case, are they doing it with other cases that we might not be as aware of? It does give me a little bit of, uneasy feeling that they're still doing this.
Sure. And when you consume UFO media, ask yourself, what's the motivation behind this? Why are these people telling the story? I'm not trying to rag on anybody, but Jazz's article, the media representation of the Hudson Valley Flap, I think I titled mine based on his. What story was he telling there? What information was he putting out there? You have to ask yourself that when you consume all things, when you watch Richard Dolan's videos, when you watch the Skinwalker Ranch show, when you watch any of these documentaries too. What are they trying to communicate there? Take that into consideration, because with documentaries and shows and and things like that, you are kind of promoting a narrative. I mean, there's no objective documentaries. There's no objective TV shows. I think it's hard to say that there's objective people. So always consider that they may have a motivation, narrative, or a reason to push the mystery. I mean, I think we talked about this last time. Debunking cases isn't a bad thing in any way. I mean, you hit on that earlier. We want the truth. We're trying to get to the truth. So we got to get all the noise out and look at the signal, right? So let's take that away. And you can have emotional attachments to these cases, or especially if you've put in a lot of work on a case, you don't want to see that it turns out to be a bunch of nothing or an illusion or something. Like the Lake Michigan case and me. If someone figures that out, that's not me, I will probably be sad for a day. And what is that? What's compelling me to be sad? An emotional connection. I like the mystery. I think we all like the mystery, right?
Right.
Oh, it's sad for a minute, but it's good in the long run. It's always good in the long run to figure out the truth of these things. Because why would you want to waste your time reading about a case that's solved?
Well, I mean, one reason is you might be able to learn from it, right? Like, are there any photos and videos of this? Because I think it would be interesting to look at those and
compare them
just
to
for reference,
other real.
Right?
Well, and also just compare them to other real UFO cases.
So there is some video by a married couple. I think their name was Pazuli, and I'm trying to think of the origin. I believe the origin of this showed up in the HBO documentary UFOs, What's Going On. Came out in the 80s, I believe. And you have some, camcorder footage of lights in the distance. And they say it's rotating. You can't make out much of it. It's actually not even a boomerang shape. It's looks kind of more like a horseshoe. And see that video shared along. But they also have video closer up of the planes flying over. You can hear them and you can see them. So, I mean, it's more credibility to these pilots were out there flying every Thursday night, and that is what people are seeing. There's video of it. Now, that documentary, I think, is a little skewed because they kind of spin the narrative a little bit and say that those pilots, those Stormville pilots, the Martians, were challenged on a dare to try to recreate the sightings, but they had been doing it long since before, since at least 1980, if not 79.
It's funny. We had a this comment here. It's not debunking if you find the answer looking at it objectively. Debunking includes a bias. And Matthew followed up with, but debunking is a loaded term now. It really is. It's almost lost its definition.
A lot of the words we use in this community are or kind of equivocal like that.
I blame Mick West.
Yeah, it's definitely his fault.
Definitely make it's your fault.
I ask that a lot. Like, what would you guys say is a debunker? What's the difference between a debunker and a skeptic?
I mean, I feel like Tony nailed it. A debunker comes in there with a bias that it's not real. I believe that's a skeptic.
I don't think that's a bad thing, though, necessarily.
No, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it gets a lot. I mean, I think this is different than a lot of other conversations because there's an emotional attachment to this, especially for the experiencer. Mm-hmm. And so it's difficult when they, it's not like you said earlier before, well, if I found out that the Michigan UFO case, turned out to be something, let's just say very terrestrial, that would make you sad. I think that's a very healthy way to deal with that, right? Like, of course, it would bum you out. You'd be like, damn, I did all that work. It just turned out to be lit up balloons with glow sticks on them. Like, wow, how did that? Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
Right.
But I think
it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah, no, but I think what happens with most people who are really into this topic is they hit that wall of, oh my God, that pit. We've talked about this feeling on the show all the time because we've had it happen to us in real time. We're like, oh my God, this is not real. This is I'm chasing my tail here. Like you get this feeling in the pit of your stomach, and then you come up to this point where like, okay, I could get angry about this, or I could breathe, not look at it for a couple minutes, and then come back and try to rationalize it for myself.
Sure.
You know, but I think a lot of folks in this conversation go for anger because it's a super easy emotion to attach yourself to very quickly. Anger is just it's for some reason it's much easier to focus on. I guess it's like the force or something. Like for whatever reason, the dark side's just easier, man.
Yeah.
You know, like and so go to the path of least resistance, and so then that puts them in a place where you're calling me a liar.
Right.
You're debunking, or your skepticism is calling me a liar. So I feel like there's no in this day and age, like we've changed the terms for so many things because it offends people. Sure. Like I feel like these two words, doesn't matter which one you use, it's 50-50 shot you're going to offend somebody.
Yeah, probably.
By using it, by even suggesting it.
I mean, most of us UFO enthusiasts, that's part of our personality. It's part of us, right? So when you that being attacked, it is personal. And I don't want anybody to take my work that I publish that way. It's never personal. It's about specific cases. And I mean, like if Hudson Valley was your case, like Lake Michigan is mine. Sorry. But like I say, I still believe that there is mystery to it. But I mean, like reacting negatively isn't a bad thing inherently. I think that social media like Twitter kind of focuses it a little bit more, with the constant need to dunk on each other and we fight. But it's fine, and talk to the community about it. Like knowing what I know about that case, because case for me, I always really liked that one when I was more of a believer. You know, it just sounded so cool. Visually, it appealed to me, and that kind of psychic connection was really what was in it. And now that's still a hanging question, and that's still something to look into. You know, you just have to look at it from different perspectives now, which is, again, why I wanted to kind of create that consortium of people, because I want to hear other people's perspectives on all these cases. Each individual, I mean, people have been seeing weird shit since the beginning of time. You know, we used to call them religious experiences, really religious visions. You know, people all even cite them as evidence of UFOs in the past. But what if this phenomenon that we're all seeing is not a interdimensional or extraterrestrial phenomenon, but a human phenomenon? It's something that we're doing that we don't understand. You know, like that's a pretty cool mystery. So like one case out of the billions, it's fine. I'm not saying you know, I'm not saying UFOs are all fake, and everyone who says they see one is a liar. Of course not.
Yeah. Well, it's gosh, I was trying to remember my thought. I mean, when I think of like ancient people describing out of body or out of world experiences, I just always think of like ayahuasca and peyote, and you know, like there was like drug use was a lot more liberal in those times. You know, like we were prescribing cocaine to people in the early 1900s, you know, to get the jitters out. You know, we're giving people heroin for a while as pain medication. You know, so that always kind of come to mind, but
psychedelics and UFOs. Was his name? He talked about that. His idea was that these UFOs are coming to tell us that, like, look, we couldn't possibly exist under your understanding of the world, and that was kind of the message that they were communicating, was that, like, you don't know anything. You know, here I am. I can't possibly exist. Deal with that. Which is an interesting idea. I think that's funny. I see a lot of the, I don't want to say psychological hypothesis, more the consciousness hypothesis, which is another word that you ask any person, you'll probably get a different definition. But where was I going with this? All these ideas are kind of like interdimensional, almost like this thing that exists outside of reality and can interact with ours, which, like, is there an objective reality? We can't say, obviously, due to the limitations of our kind of sensory
4
input.
dimensions.
Who knows? And, like, can you even argue that? Can you argue against it? I don't know. It's an idea. I do see things, supernatural things, UFOs and stuff. I see them always kind of moving into the shadows of our knowledge. So greater understandings like quantum mechanics and consciousness. This is like, those are those dark areas of collective human knowledge. And they always kind of move into that range, which is interesting to me. Maybe it's for safety. Maybe it's just because we've ruled other things out. But I don't know. That's also something to consider. Like, if we don't fully understand these aspects, can we really use them as an explanation? I don't personally think so. But it's interesting to think about. But who knows? We're always looking for the stuff that we don't know. That's the exciting thing about these mysteries.
Yeah, I feel like it's a these theories like interdimensional and all these, conscious theories I find them very interesting and compelling, absolutely. And they may be true, but on the other hand, it's kind of unfalsifiable, right? If there really are these trickster interdimensional people that are, or entities that are appearing and disappearing based on our own reactions. Yeah, we would never know. And at that point, it almost becomes more of a kind of a religion, right? You either kind of buy into it and believe it, or, you don't, right?
And I feel parallels like that. I was talking to someone. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was talking to someone on Twitter recently where I was kind of trying to communicate that, there's, I'm not going to say these people are in a cult or a religion or anything, but there are, you guys know the miracle of the sun in Fatima, right?
Yeah.
Where thousands of people saw the sun dance across the sky and then come crashing down. Obviously, the sun did not move across the sky. That would destroy the solar system, right? People see. Was it mass hallucination? Is that even a thing? I don't know. Or did they kind of will it so hard and believe it so hard that they convinced themselves they saw this? Or was it something else? But that was described as the Virgin Mary coming down and talking to those kids, right? So I notice nowadays, while these things used to be religious experiences, now it's kind of just the secular flavor of the same thing. These are advanced, or like technologically advanced beings now instead of angels, or consciousness now is this kind of nebulous term that's essentially just the secular version of the soul, right? So these experiences that humanity's had time always has kind of a different window dressing on it, but they're similar experiences. I know Valet talks about that in folklore. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I don't know if folklore was meant to be taken as like eyewitness accounts necessarily, or if they were, parables instead. Kind of like people will mention Ezekiel's wheel a lot when talking about ancient. Now that was a religious vision. He didn't literally see that. The Bible isn't a really old newspaper. You know what I mean?
Right.
These are writings that carry meaning and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's not. I don't necessarily.
There are also stories written 100 years after the fact.
Sure.
After it happened. So,
so I think he might take some of these things a little too literally. Is in my understanding. He's got a lot that I haven't read yet, though. So. You had mentioned Jazz Shaw before, and I guess he, his article was hinting at, this is something unique. Mm-hmm.
But he'd also written an article about the Japanese airline flight.
Yes.
In the 80s.
Yes.
He completely debunked that. And you can see, if you ever want to see that feeling hit the pit of my stomach, or that feeling of, oh my God, this is bumming me out. Go watch that episode we did with him about that article that he wrote, because that was one of the cases I used to hang my hat on.
Right. Yeah.
Like, this is a legit, because it's one of the cases, and I know I'm going to get a lot of shit for this in the chat, but it was one of the cases that Michio Kaku had cited a lot, and he would, and it was because, it was the radar in the plane, the radar on the ground at the airport, the radar at NORAD. Like there was 3 different radars picking this up. You had the pilots, and then it turns out you find out more about these pilots. You find out more about what they saw, what they actually reported.
Right.
It was just one pilot in the plane that saw all of this madness, and everybody else at the plane was like, nah. And that pilot was regulated to desk duty, and the other pilots went on to work.
But you can see how a story like that takes on a new life, and people kind of add to it and exaggerate it, and it grows and grows and grows, and then becomes, it's one of those top cases that everyone knows, much like Hudson Valley. But and like that experience is something to reflect on. Like, why are you disappointed? And each person probably has their own
because I wanted it to be real.
Right.
I wanted it to be real, and then he crushed that for me. Crushed it. And I was like, this sucks. But
now,
the next day I was like, hey man, this is gonna happen. And it's a good thing that we learned a lot more. A lot more about that case now than you did before. And anytime anybody, and before this article, Nick, I kind of thought the same thing about the Hudson Valley UFO Flap.
I did for a long time too.
So now anytime I hear this in a chat or in a discussion that I'm in, I can be like, yeah, that's BS.
Well, you can share that now.
And so, I mean, of course you don't want to say, yeah, that's BS, because of course that's very offensive depending on who you're talking to. But you could try and be like, hey, this is what I've heard. This is what actually happened.
Yeah.
Versus the lore of the story. It's sexy. It's fun. I wish it was true.
Really great.
But unfortunately, this one's just not. And here's the thing. I also just tell people, like, look, if we figured out 2 of the lores, right, and we've given them answers, that's cool. We can now scratch those off and put those off on the known list. But it just takes one. It just takes
I agree.
One of these to be true. And I'm kind of in the camp of, out of all the stories ever told, we don't think one of these is true. I one of these actually happened.
Right. I can't believe that it's all misidentification and hoaxes.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that either. And I feel like you can. This show is really sort of, boy, oh boy. Like,
if you believe that, you should be embracing debunkers and skeptics, right?
You absolutely
whittle it down
should.
And get to the
but how do we get the rest of the community to think like that?
That's a good question.
Not to tell them what to think, but almost like, man, can we step back and just be a little more rational about this?
So a little over 10 years ago, when I was writing a skeptical publication called The Bent Spoon, and that was the initial kind of premise for that, was to the true believers and kind of find common ground to work together. Because these true believers, they know the cases, right? They have different perspectives on things. Let's hear from them. That's what I always say. I think that believer versus skeptic kind of archetypes is a false dichotomy. Like, we're all trying to identify UFOs. UFOs are unidentified. Unknowns are unknowns until they're knowns. And that's what we're all. I wanted to say something just before that experience you had when learning about that case, that sinking feeling. I think that's really important, because now you realize that you personally have a bias, right? So you can recognize that now, when you're looking at cases in the future, you have a belief or a want to believe that these things are real, and you can be aware of it. And then while examining new cases, you can know that about yourself. And I think, you know what I mean? Like, we all have biases. In fact, I stepped away from the paranormal community, the UFO community, after that skeptical publication, because I realized I had become way too cynical. I was just rhetoric and just trying to dunk on believers the entire time. And it was a bad faith position for me to be in. So I walked away for years. I just would kind of a blank slate and started taking a look at these cases. And I wanted to do Lake Michigan because it's close to me, and I kind of vaguely remember it growing up. Wanted to do Hudson Valley because it was one of my favorite kind of aesthetically pleasing UFO sightings. It was very, very close encounters. And then there's some other ones that are still mysteries to me. I think the Portage County case is, of 66 and the Dexter, Michigan case also of 66. Those are pretty mysterious. Those are really interesting cases too, because those cases are the straw that broke the back of Project Blue Book, really, because that kind of kicked off. That's where the swamp gas explanation came from, marsh gas. That was the media being irresponsible and kind of running with it, which irritated Gerald R. Ford, who demanded congressional hearings, which led to the Condon Report. And it was a big chain of events. But those cases were really interesting. And there's plenty, there's tons, there's so many mysterious cases out there, and they all deserve being looked at from all different perspectives, from all different people in this community.
Real quick, Blue Shift Special Projects was asking what's the article they're talking about, author, title, etc. I believe we'll just say all three. Nick's article is in his link for that is in the description below. The article that we talked about with Jazz Shaw is on the debrief. So you can look up Jazz Shaw's writing, and he did a breakdown of the Japanese airline flight. What was it? Just the number of it? Does anybody know off the top of their head? 15 something.
Not off the top of my head.
Anyway, but yeah. So I hope that's what you're referring to. But there is definitely. I'll say this, and then we'll move on to sort of the news of the day. Nick, do you want to hang out for the second hour and help us break down the news of the day?
Absolutely. If I can take a very short break.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
What I was going to say, it just sort of touching on the last thing that you said, was this sort of bad faith position of dunking on people, and making them feel stupid, making yourself feel good. That is really addictive.
Yes,
and it's just as addictive as placating to an audience, and telling them what they want to hear,
right,
to get your popularity boosted.
Right. Yeah, I think that everybody's susceptible to that. Attention, fame, people paying attention to you, people listening to you, like actually listening to you. That's a huge feeling. So yeah, I can see how that could lead to a cycle where you feel like you need to constantly produce. Right. And if you're not producing more and more interesting things, you're going to lose that attention. So, I mean, it's a multifaceted thing. There's so many different factors in it, and we're all people with different motivations. Yeah. But that is also something to keep aware. I mean, there are people that are deliberately trying to trick you out there. Philip Imbrogno is one of those people. Yeah. He's disappeared from the scene now. He had a long history. He was pretty prolific. He worked with Rosemary Ellen Guiley quite a bit. All of his degrees from MIT and University of Texas, that none of that was true. He had undergraduate and graduate degrees, and then a PhD in theoretical chemistry, I think, from MIT, and none of that was true. But that didn't get found out until I want to say like 2010. He was a main figure in the community for a very long time, and he kind of piggybacked off of using Hynek's name from this case, because Hynek was involved periodically in it.
Well, I have a feeling that's sort of the thing that probably really propelled this story. This was the last case that Hynek worked on, one of the last cases, and he was perplexed by it before he found out what it was going on with it, and so they used that to propel their versions of the story and write their books or sell their tickets for whatever con they're doing. And I don't mean con like festivals or I mean like a
right
a con, whatever, a convention. But no, I mean, like, I definitely can relate to that feeling. It's part of the reason why we cut the show from 3 times a week to once a week, and we we pop in our reviews here and there. And by the way, we're doing a review of Nope on Saturday. So join us for that. That's gonna be a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, we, at least for me, it was clear that whatever the story is, whatever the narrative is, it's being shaped. Yeah. And it's being produced by God knows who. I can't even begin to understand why, who, where it comes from. But and it was addictive to It was addictive. It felt good. It felt like, like
Yeah.
we were propelling a story that needed to be told. And in a lot of ways, it still needs to be told. I think there's aspects of the story that I really love. And I think that's where, the philosophy always changes. The philosophies always grow. Ways of thinking always challenge yourself to think differently. And really, we've tried to do that, especially now in this new year. But, I think it's valuable. I think there is value in looking at this very confusing topic with some rationality and trying to take the emotion out of it. I think that's where man, I feel like what is Spock? What's his race?
Vulcan.
Vulcan. I feel like the Vulcans totally have it right with a society of zero emotion.
I don't think there's anything wrong with emotion. Sorry, rather.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree with you. I think that you almost have to have emotion. You have to experience that pit in your stomach of disappointment because people put walls up and don't want to experience that. And I think that that's kind of a problem.
Yeah, but we're expressing that opinion because we're a species that feels. Like in a Vulcan species, there's no war, there's no hunger, there's no they figured out all the things that we like. There's no fake news on Vulcan, they're not constantly eating each other on Vulcan, and of course that's boring. There's no parties, there's no love, there's no there's no getting in trouble, there's no sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach. But man, God, I would seriously consider bypassing all emotion to solve all the issues that we're having.
Yeah, I mean, things can get heated, but like I said, that emotion that you definitely something to reflect on. You understand yourself better now, right?
Right.
You know that you want to believe, and you're going to have that bias when you're looking at bad either, as long as you're aware of it, right? That could be what drives you to look into them, But it's also something good to be aware of, because all of these UFO cases, they're all individual mysteries, right? And even if we don't find ET, maybe we discover some novel atmospheric phenomenon. You know what I mean? Maybe we find something out about ourselves psychologically.
I think we're gonna figure out we figured something out, and we're a lot smarter than we're putting on.
It's a perpetual mystery. That's what I love about it. There's always something to look into. There's always something to investigate, and it's never going to stop. Right?
I would almost take the ears. I don't know. Would you guys take Vulcan ears to solve world issues?
Yeah. Well, I think that it might be a little too simplistic there too, Lou, because you like a pure rational utilitarian society might do some awful stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like the Romulans.
Like the Romulans. All right. Well, on that note, Nick, go take your break. We'll set up the next hour here.
Cool. I'll be right back.
And so this next hour we're going to be talking about some fun stuff. So we've got the new AARO office. I guess we should probably start there, right?
Yeah, that's the big news announced yesterday, right, by the DoD.
Yep. Been announced by the DoD, and I love how they seem so proud about it. They're like, oh, check it out, our new office. Here's their Twitter handle. Now you don't have to bother us about it anymore. Go bother them. Yeah. Well, okay. So we were discussing, I think, was it behind pre-show? How, I watched John Greenwald's breakdown of this yesterday, which was really great. I'd highly recommend checking it out. But the thing that I found funny that was sort of the same confusions we were having of, wait a second, I thought AOI MSG was over. Like, I thought it didn't exist. Like, what's going on? How do these offices take place? And to me, like, I was like, oh, John Greenwald's confused about it too. That's cool. But then I started thinking about the verbiage of last year's NDAA, and I started thinking about the offices in the order they came in. And it seems like to me, and anybody, please feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it feels like it went from, obviously the early renditions of this OSAP, right? ATIP, and then that morphed into the UAPTF, and then that morphed into the Astro office for like a day.
Well,
and
I think that was just a name that was proposed in one of the bills.
It was proposed in one of the bills, right? Yeah,
through.
it never actually got signed into law. Yeah, they proposed Astro, it changed into AOI MSG, and then that was written in the bill. And AOI MSG, from my understanding, was a place card until the new office was established 180 days after the announcement of AOI MSG, which if you, and I Googled this, 180 days into the year would have been June 29th. So they're all about 2 or 3 weeks late on the 180-day deadline, which all of this makes sense. Like it as far as what office took over what, it's starting to become more clear now. They were just waiting to name a director. They were waiting to get a blue check mark, and they were waiting, to make sure they had all their, I guess, ducks in a row and meet this deadline. And then they pretty much did that.
Well, and they were probably working on it. And maybe a lot of this was in place back then. And now this is just, the public announcement potentially, right?
Right. Which tells me, and this is something we've been talking about for a while, like this, now the office exists, right? So they are going to be responsible for the first public report that we definitely know about on October 31st. And I'm curious to know if they've been working on that report or if they're just now getting to work on that report. And all the work was setting up the offices and making sure everybody has computers, blah, 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 blah. And now they work on the report. So I have a feeling that this, just trying to manage expectations, but October 31st, Halloween of this year, when this report comes out, I have a feeling it's going to be very similar in revelations to the ODNI report from last summer. And then the following year, where they've got a full year under their belt, they've got all of their systems in place as far as what the chain of command is, what goes to what, who's in charge of what, who answers to who. And then that 2023 public report, I think, is going to have some, I think, really great stuff. But the thing that Greenwald said about this new office that I also picked up on is, man, this is leaving a huge paper trail, this new office, which is going to be a FOIA King's Field of Dreams. He's going to be, I mean, the amount of work that he's going to put these people through is going, he's like salivating at the thought of it, he's like rubbing his hands together yesterday in his breakdown of it. But I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like, I'm trying to like we do step back, rationally think about this. But I'm curious, like, what were your early thoughts on this, rather? And we'll get into who like runs this office, but what are your first thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's very cool. My first thoughts were, why are they doing all domain anomaly, right? And my first thought is that, are they doing that because of the 2023 NDAA and the language that's in there about transmedium and, submersible UFOs, essentially USOs. So a lot of people, last year when AOI MSG was announced, people thought that was, indirectly in response to the pending legislation. And it kind of seems like it probably was, right? And people were kind of viewing that as maybe a bad thing, as the DOD trying to kind of usurp the intentions of Congress. But now as I see it, this time, it does kind of just seem like they're just trying to do their best. They're trying to abide by what Congress is telling them, and they're doing it. They're looking at all domains, which I think is very cool.
The thing that first hit me when I heard the name of this office was the word resolution. To me, that feels like, oh yeah, we know what this is. Like, we're going to give you an answer. Don't worry about it. Like, that's the only, like, there's a couple of things that I had reservations about. This was one of them, the resolution part of this. Like, although, the word that precedes it is anomaly, but I do love the all domain. That sort of figures out UAP, UFO, USO, like that covers everything. All domain. I love that. And it's also just an awesome acronym, AARO, AARO, right?
It's
super
much better
easy
than
to remember.
AIMSOG.
Way better than AIMSOG. Nobody And this is another thing that just tells me they're listening, right? They're possibly listening. Like everybody complained about the AOI MSG name tag. They were like, this is the dumbest. Even reporters wouldn't, like, nobody. Can anybody tell me what AOI MSG stands for without looking it up?
Hell no.
Yeah. No.
Right? Like nobody bothered memorizing this. This one, All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. This one, remember this one, because I don't think this is changing. This is the permanent office, and this is their press release. I wanted to read the press release. It's not too long, and then I want to get into the resume of the director because I find that very interesting. So on July 15th, 2022, Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks, in coordination with the Director of National Intelligence, amended her original direction to the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security by renaming and expanding the scope of Airborne Object Identification and Management Group, AIMSOG, AOI MSG, to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO. Due to the enactment of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2022, which included a provision to establish an office in coordination with DNI with responsibilities that were broader than those originally assigned to the AOI MSG. Today, USD, Undersecretary of Defense, Intelligence and Security, the Honorable Ronald S. Moultrie, who was one of the gentlemen who testified in the public hearing, informed the department of the establishment of AARO with the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, and named Dr. Sean M. Kirkpatrick, most recently the Chief Scientist at the Defense Intelligence Agency Missile and Space Command Center, as the Director of AARO. The mission of AARO will be to synchronize efforts across the Department of Defense and with other U.S. federal departments and agencies to detect, identify, and attribute objects of interest in or near military installations, operating areas, training areas, special use airspace, and other areas of interest, and as necessary to mitigate any associated threats to safety, operation, and national security. This includes anomalous unidentified space, airborne, submerged, and trans-medium objects. The AARO Executive Council, AARO Exec, led by Undersecretary of Defense for National Intelligence and Security, Ronald Moultrie, will provide oversight and direction to the AARO along these primary lines of effort. Pay attention to this, because this, I think, is important too. Number 1, surveillance, collection, and reporting. Number 2, system capabilities and design. Number 3, intelligence operations and analysis. Number 4, mitigation and defeat. Number 5, governance. And number 6, science and technology. So they're going to provide oversight and direction on those primary lines of effort. And John Greenwald said each one of these produces a paper trail. So awesome. See Deputy Secretary of Defense Hicks AARO Establishment Memo here. See the Moultrie AARO Establishment Memo here, and then read Kirkpatrick's bio here. Now, this is where it gets super interesting. But before we get into Kirkpatrick's bio, I'm curious to know, rather, what did you think of that press release?
Yeah, I mean, I fairly straightforward. You know, I'm very, excited for this new office, and I think the most exciting thing is they're doing it all in the open. So we're going to get at least a paper trail. We're going to, have a lead, have a whiff of what they're doing.
Hopefully, yeah. This is okay. So the thing also John said, and I agree, because this is kind of, and I really started thinking about this too. And I think this is the biggest difference between Blue Book and Grudge and all of those projects in that time frame is that there was an impotence from the public to look at this. We had the Roswell crash, which was a major news item, and then changed the next day, so it's caused all sorts of confusion. You had the Kecksburg crash. You had the UFO incident in Michigan, which we had mentioned earlier, propelled Gerald Ford to make a speech and go, "What the hell's going on?" Or was it Governor Ford at the time? And then that led into Project Grudge, right? Am I getting that right?
No. Sorry.
Yeah, correct me on that.
Gerald Ford was he was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, and it led to the Condon Report. It was actually the end of
the Condon Report.
It's the third kind of UFO investigation crew. It went Sign, Grudge, and then Blue Book, and then this was kind of what stopped it. I think the Air Force at the time really wanted it to. They were catching a lot of public flack at this point too, and then that swamp gas comment was kind of what pushed.
That's what set it over the edge. Right. So my greater point being is that there was pressure coming from the public for them to do these reports and to make these offices and to report to the public.
Yes.
With this, I mean, yes, we had the big phone home. Yes, we have Twitter. Yes, we have, but it's not like I don't know. I'm curious to know what the difference would be. Like, are there as many citizens you think reaching out about this as there was after Roswell, or after the swamp gas incident? Like, are there angry people calling Congress going, hey, I want an answer to this, and that swamp gas BS is not good enough, and you better give me something better? Like, I don't think anybody's doing that today. And go ahead.
It kind of seems like it's a direct result from, Skinwalker Ranch and OSAP and Lou Elizondo's influence. And, that kind of went up until the UAP task force when they had Jay Stratton and Travis Taylor here. What I think is really exciting here is that it seems like we have a clean slate. We have, Sean Kirkpatrick, who seems very qualified. We have Moultrie, who I was very impressed with at the hearing. I know a lot of people weren't, but I thought that he seems like a good guy to be in there. So now we do have this kind of, we've broken that line of that people like, Stephen Greenstreet can indict the, origin story of that. So this is kind of a clean slate, and I'm excited. I think that we'll hopefully get some resolutions.
Yeah, right. It's in the name of the office.
I'm interested to see what comes out of it. I don't have high expectations ever from our government, but we'll see. We'll see if that kind of usual cast of characters, kind of what you were hinting at earlier, isn't involved. It gives me slightly higher hopes personally. But
their names are not mentioned anywhere, right?
That's good.
I think like Rather said, it's a nice clean slate, and that's kind of what I felt like too. Like, this feels like it feels different, but it also feels like, and I think honestly we've discussed this a lot, but I think part of this is, they see the emergence of Galileo, they see camera systems getting better and technology getting cheaper. They know that their technology is going to be caught on one of these camera systems very soon. And I think they're trying to get ahead of that aspect of it. And then I'm crossing my fingers that they also are looking at the diamond in the roughs, theirs. But here's the one red flag I have with this, and I'm totally stoked on this. I think this is here's a question. Does the new AARO office move the disclosure clock? And look, we'll move the disclosure clock once I read the resume of Mr. Kirkpatrick. And I think maybe that might move the clock a little bit. But my issue with this is that when I read Mr. Kirkpatrick's resume, boy, oh boy, it's like they were handpicked by the military industrial complex and put into this new little office. And I'm curious if we can get him to answer, like, if we can give him a truth serum and ask him one question, like, is this your dream position? Did you want this job? I'm curious to know if he went into this job willingly and curious and had a scientific interest in it, or if this was a job that they were like, Kirkpatrick, we need you. We need you here, buddy. You're going to be our high neck. And that's, I hope he's not a meat shield for obfuscating secret tech.
Let me ask you this in regards
or the obfuscation of secret tech.
Right. Your disclosure clock. What is your take on disclosure? What do you believe there is to disclose?
I believe a lot, right? Like right. the science of it. I think, again, like the whole point of the disclosure clock, like Mick West is midnight. So when we strike midnight and Mick West believes that this phenomena there's a legitimacy to it, we've hit disclosure. To me, that's the definition of disclosure. If we're going to define it.
Well, you believe at least that our government has obfuscated some truth, right?
Obviously, I believe they have more answers, right?
Okay.
I don't think they have all the answers. I don't think they know the truth, right? I mean, there's so much that I think about this, but really,
it could be a lot of things.
I think it is a lot of things, but I also believe that part of this is we're scratching the tip of an iceberg that can sink any ship. And before we get to see this whole iceberg, it could take us thousands of years before we realize how big this iceberg is. And the things we're seeing are literally just scratching a few snow particles off the tip of this iceberg. And our understanding or our filter is like, oh, it must be aliens, when it could be something so complex that it can't even be explained to a simpleton like us, like it'd be like us trying to explain thermal dynamics to a cricket.
Right. Well,
I think that we could be dealing with something like that.
I hope this new office and stuff isn't going to end up being more obfuscation, more behind closed door meetings and things like that. If good data comes out of this, then that's awesome. But we'll see. I'm skeptical as always. I'm dubious.
Yeah, I mean, at least they'd be obfuscating in public, kind of, right? As opposed to the decades before where they were obfuscating and denying that they were even looking at it. So I think that it's a step forward. But
hopefully,
not too hopeful we'll actually get the disclosure we want from them.
We'll see. I'm skeptical, always optimistic. Let's see it. Let's see what they have.
I think would be great. I don't think we're gonna get it, but I'm assuming the reason why you start a Twitter handle is because that is your public face of the office, right? That's sort of how they're going to interact with the public. But I think, honestly, if they want to win a lot of faith from skeptics, we'll just call them skeptics. If they want to win a lot of faith from skeptics and even the community, people who are just very distrustful of our government, Artist and Tony, I know you're in the house. He just busting chops. But the idea that they could, if they start doing Twitter spaces and people can ask Kirkpatrick questions, I'd be shocked. But I'm telling you right now, that would win so much goodwill from people who really want answers to this. Like, if you're going to have a Twitter handle, start doing some Twitter spaces, man. Like, start taking questions from us. And I think that's kind of what I'm starting to feel a little left out in this verbiage of things is like, we're not going to answer to you guys. We're going to give you a report once a year, and whatever you get through for you, you get through for you. Sure. And I'm kind of like, no, that's not good enough. Like, that's not good enough. Like, if you're going to have a public face, I think Kirkpatrick, if we're going to be paying for this office as taxpayers, and this is something we're going to be talking to John Greenwald about because we're starting to put together the template letter for the Big Phone Home.
Yes.
I want Kirkpatrick doing a public press conference of some kind at least twice a year. I would say once every quarter would be appropriate.
Yeah, there's interest
4 times a year. There's interest there. You started the damn Twitter handle. People want answers to this. Start interacting with the public more, even if it's only for an hour, and you give us long-winded answers and we only get 3 questions in there, fine. But for example, and we didn't even talk about this yet. Rather the other day put in a question for Adam Schiff. And it Jesus, how have we not talked about this? But like,
it goes to the question of what have Congress seen, right? Are they doing this AARO because they really think that there is stuff in all domains, or and by stuff I mean non-human intelligence, or is it just a mystery that they're trying to find out? Do they have anything to disclose or not? And Yeah, I mean, I kind of got the
He gave you a pretty
impression
good
that
answer.
I liked his answer.
Yeah, no, he gave me I pretty much asked him, if it's a distraction or if this is a real issue worth looking into. And yeah, I mean, he gave a very well-rounded answer that's very hard to disagree with. He essentially said that, yes, pilots are seeing stuff that's not just their eyes, they're seeing it with sensors as well. Some of it does appear to defy physics. And so, no, it's not a distraction. We should be looking into it. But it didn't sound like he was convinced that it was something truly anomalous, something non-human intelligence. He was definitely open for that possibility, but I kind of got the impression that they don't have the video of the aliens inside of the craft kind of thing. They have very unusual stuff, but its doors still half closed, half open on whether it's truly anomalous.
True. Yeah, what people find compelling is completely subjective. We saw those green triangles from Corbell.
Yeah,
those were compelling to some people.
I mean, they're compelling to me the first time I saw them, right?
Sure, yeah.
I didn't know about Boca at the time, and God, the idea of flying pyramids overhead sounds pretty crazy, pretty awesome.
Right, exactly. And if you don't have that experience, it does look really strange. So, I mean, always keep that in mind. What these members of Congress are seeing, even behind closed doors, may, like Schiff said, appear to be compelling, appear to be defying physics. But these are, having video, having radar data, these are singular perspectives of each thing. And illusions can be created from any perspective. So we got the more data points, the better, obviously. And hopefully we do see something like that, something more compelling where you have multiple data points so you get kind of a clearer picture. I would love to see that come out of this office. That would be great.
Yeah, and I would love it, Lou, if they did give these, biannual press conferences where they tell us data. I'm not very optimistic on that, but I still think that, just by this office being in force and informing Congress, we will get a little bit of the perspective of what the office is telling Congress, right? If I ask this question to Adam Schiff in another, lecture 2 years from now, his answer is probably going to be different. And I think that, that's probably where we're going to get most of the information from, is kind of filtered through Congress, which isn't perfect, but it's something.
Well, but here's the thing, though. Now we have an office that is beholden to the taxpayer in a way. And we didn't have this office before with somebody we could dance to. And so now I think a demand, and it's a very reasonable demand, is we want to talk to you 4 times a year. We ask for 4, we get 2. You know what I mean? Like that's how politics goes. Like you want a $10 billion budget, ask for 20. Mm-hmm. And get 12.
The thing I will say about that is yes, it's taxpayer funded, but if they don't provide the customer service that we like, unfortunately we can't boycott, right? You still have to pay those taxes. No,
we can't boycott, but we can voice our opinions to our lawmakers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And say, hey, this office is not living up to the standard you promised. And of course, that only goes so far. But again, like, geez, man,
hold your representatives accountable.
Why not try?
Absolutely.
I can understand being apathetic. Like I didn't vote the last election. I was so pissed off at my choices. And I turned out to be right. Like nothing has changed. Everything is exactly the same. I don't care which side of the aisle you fall on. That's shit.
Absolutely true.
It's absolute garbage right now.
Still building that wall, surprisingly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't even want to get into the specifics.
Yeah,
it's shit for everyone right now.
Agreed.
What do you got, rather? It feels like you're gonna say something.
I mean, yeah, I feel like the Capitol isn't at risk right now. But
true. But the Supreme Court's been doing some pretty heinous stuff.
Yeah, and there's also kids in cages still. Look, I don't want to get into.
We're teetering on.
Yeah, we're teetering on a whole nother conversation. But I'm just saying, for everyone, it sucks. Okay, it sucks, and the reason why it sucks is look in the mirror. It sucks because we don't hold them accountable. And part of the Big Phone Home is not only to show you how to get involved with your government from a UAP UFO perspective, which is great. Awesome. Love you. Thank you so much. But it's also a window into how to do it for other things that you're passionate about besides UFOs. And if we got a shit government, it's because the citizens aren't holding it up. We're make a phone call and then go march. Okay, do both. Don't just do one.
Yeah.
Do you like, and I'm sorry. I feel like look at what's happening in Sri Lanka, looks what's happening in Italy. Like there's more of us than there are of them. always.
Well, the state has a monopoly on violence, though, so let's be careful. But
all right,
yes,
Jesus
there are more
Christ.
of us for
Back
sure.
to UFOs. Let's get to Dr. Kirkpatrick's resume. Okay, so the cool thing about Dr. Kirkpatrick is, like you said, rather it's a clean slate. Like it's.
I think Lou finally froze.
Oh,
computer might be overheating.
Wait, am I overheating? Oh, am I back?
You're back now.
You know what? Here's what I'll do is I'll stop sharing the screen because I think the sharing of the screens is what messes up my feed sometimes. Anyway, okay, sorry. So am I back? Everything's good?
Golden.
Okay, cool.
We're getting too political.
That's I think that's what it was. So the cool thing, like you said, it's a clean break. Like it's got nobody we've heard of. It's not Colm Kelleher. It's not, name any one of the dozens of scientists. It's not even Gary Nolan. It's not anyone we've heard.
Presumably people who don't have any biases either way. Hopefully, right?
But I have a feeling if he has a bias, it's going to lean toward the military. Like I think his loyalty is very clear where his loyalty stands, and it's not with us, right? But if he wants to crumble that image, just come out of your shell twice a year and just talk to us. We don't want just a report, at least twice a year. But anyway, let's
tweet
get
us every anomaly.
A little bit. Tweet us every anomaly. That'd be great. That would be great. So Dr. Kirkpatrick was asked by USDIS, which is Undersecretary of Defense, Intelligence and Security. So many acronyms in this discussion. Robert Moultrie, to stand up and lead AARO in early 2022, known as Dr. K to his staff and team. He brings over 2 decades of experience and significant depth of expertise in scientific and technical intelligence. And space policy, research and development, acquisitions, and operations, specializing in space and counter space mission areas. Dr. Kirkpatrick was born in Columbus, Georgia, to an Army family. He grew up in the Atlanta area, where he attended the University of Georgia as an undergraduate to study physics. Dr. Kirkpatrick finished his PhD work in nonlinear and non-equilibrium phonon dynamics of rare earth doped fluoride crystals, also at the University of Georgia, and is currently an adjunct professor at University of Georgia, or at UGA, excuse me. Dr. Kirkpatrick, boy, he's got that name does not flow off the tongue, began his career in defense and intelligence-related science and technology immediately out of graduate school. After receiving his PhD in physics in 1995, he subsequently took a postdoctoral position at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, investigating laser-induced molecular vibrations of high explosives under an AFOSR program. In 1996, AFOSR program is like a military program. If you didn't know, I believe it's Air Force related. In 1996, he was offered a National Research Council fellowship at the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory in Washington, D.C., investigated novel solid-state lasers for the department. That is insane. Investigating novel solid-state lasers for the Department of the Navy in 1997. 1997. I cannot imagine where solid state lasers are today.
Don't look at me.
Yeah, I have a feeling they're probably attached to some very fun toys. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. So investigate nonlinear optics, novel ultra-fast spectroscopic methods and nonlinear micro-nano fabrication techniques for the Air Force. In 2003, he was offered a program manager position in the National Reconnaissance Office and converted to the CIA in 2005. In 2007, he was assigned as Chief Technology Officer in a joint CIA-DIA program office, where he later became Division Chief as DIA officer. In 2010, he was asked to serve as a space control portfolio manager for the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, Space and Intelligence Office of the Secretary of Defense. And it goes on a couple other things, but I mean, dude, this guy is drenched in military industrial complex.
Yeah, former CIA. I mean, the CIA has had its hands in ufology since the beginning, right?
Which
I think that's a good thing, though. You know,
I don't think it's a bad thing, but you can understand how people are going to hear that and go, don't trust them. Don't trust them. And that's why I think this office needs an average Joe oversight kind of person. You know, like I'd rather be Squidding to be like
good press secretary, maybe.
Good press secretary. Although I don't want a press secretary, because their job is to lie to you and essentially, you know, to obfuscate and answer real questions. I just feel like this, and again, maybe these are crazy ass, but I feel like this feels more civilian oversight to be like, and I don't know how you do that, because these are top secret discussions, right? You know, like how do you do that? But there's got to be a middle ground somewhere where people can go, or maybe there's not. You know, is there anyone that you could put in that office that you go, okay, I trust that one. That one's gonna tell me the truth every time, besides yourself?
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Well, they probably shouldn't be telling us if there are secret military programs that people are identifying as UFOs, right? Like that's probably is a justified secret.
For sure.
And I think that it does, you know, someone like Kirkpatrick probably does know all the, you know, crazy military secrets. And I think that's a good thing, because that means that hopefully they'll spend their time looking at the real anomalies, you know, looking at the things that they don't know.
Good faith, right?
Hopefully he brings resolution.
Yeah.
And clarity.
Well, speaking of resolution, I want to throw this theory that just occurred to me by you two to see if you think it holds any water. But, you know, the Nimitz.
Was it a Rathers rant? Did we forget Rathers rant? Was this your Rathers rant?
No, this is just a something that after hearing totally his resume.
Different. Okay.
So some dots kind of came together potentially in my mind. You know, one of the more interesting, plausible explanations for Nimitz, if there is a prosaic one, is the idea that these are maybe holograms being, you know, shot by lasers and energizing a little sphere and creating something that really looks like a solid object that they can control and zip around. And, you know, hearing Kirkpatrick's resume of, you know, non-linear optics and solid state lasers, it seems like if that was something that our government is doing, he might be the one that's doing it.
I wouldn't be surprised if that case turned out to be something of our own, radar spoofing. I mean, and this goes back into that psychic connection that I always talk about. Didn't they explain that it kind of cut them off on the way to the cap point? The fact that it knew that is a little suspicious to me, personally. But yeah, he might know. Yeah, he might know.
That aspect of the story is suspicious to you, that the craft knew the cap point?
Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it a little strange? I mean, it either is highly implicates something very strange, right? Which there's always room for, or those pilots are getting put through their paces, and same with all of the radar systems and stuff like that. They could be testing that. Didn't the Nimitz have some kind of new form of radar on it?
No, they did. They did have a new
so
form
what
of radar.
better way to test it than, you know, not another plane that they'd recognize, but some of this radar spoofing technology or something. There's a lot of theories going on right now.
I do know that the cap point, if I'm not mistaken, I won't say I know, but if I'm not mistaken, the cap point was, I don't think it changed, and it was very well known within the flight squadron what the cap point was, especially pre-mission. Everybody knew what that was, so it wouldn't be difficult for that information to trickle its way to somebody playing some games with a top secret program. I can see what you're saying.
Right.
It's not out of the realm, like what's more believable, that or an object actually knew where that cap point was and flew to?
Well, I don't know. And you see that kind of phenomenon come up in a lot of other cases too, though. So maybe there's something to that. I'm not saying I have no idea what they saw. That's something to think about.
Well, here's the thing, and this includes me, and you, especially if you hate this show, boy, you better pay attention to these next words. Because all the people out there that are championing this and really sort of in a way going, haha, I told you so. See, he was right. This is right. This is happening. This is fact. This is all real. And look at this office and look at this person and look at what's going on here. And I get excited about these things too. And I also see sort of the political winds changing, in my opinion, is what's happening on this topic. I think there's a lot of reasons why. It's not just one thing. But if this office gives us resolution on crash retrievals, which they will be looking into, if it gives us resolution on the Nimitz in some form or another, you have to accept it. You have to accept it. Okay?
People won't.
I know, but I'm just telling you right now, if this office ends up giving us rational explanations and those rational explanations check out, we have to accept it. Okay? Like, that's the deal.
People are already laying the groundwork for not accepting it, though, right? They were they were mad when Jay Stratton and Travis Taylor were fired, and I think that Lou Elizondo kind of threw some shade at Kirkpatrick when he was announced as the UAP task force lead. And I think that there is also people. He.
When did he do that?
God, I don't remember specifically, but there was some.
Damn it, Rather, you can't just say that, and you can't just say that, Rather. Damn it, you better cite that claim right there. Dig it up.
In addition to that, people are tweeting now, having issues with the department that it's under, saying that it was, this is the same department that Lou Elizondo was frustrated with, and that it's maybe suspect that they're keeping it under that department versus like some of the other departments that were proposed in the Gillibrand amendment last year.
It is coming from the DOD, which I know Lou is very adamantly, I guess, against. He does not a big fan of the DOD taking over this part of the conversation.
Yeah, I think it was a more specific department than that, but I don't have it in the top of my brain.
But I'm saying, like Susan Goff, the Department of Defense, I feel like that's the thorn in Lou's side, and the Department of Defense. I mean, when the handle for their Twitter is DOD underscore. Hold on a second. DOD underscore AARO. At DOD underscore AARO. This is very much a Department of Defense thing. So I wonder if that does piss him off. I wonder if I'm curious to know what Christopher Mellon thinks about this new office. Have they said anything since the announcement of this? Have they tweeted out anything that you guys know of?
I saw Gary Nolan commented on the announcement tweet, superb with 3 dots. So I think that was ambiguous whether that was a positive or a negative comment.
I heard him on the Cab show the other day, and he was actually very excited about this office.
Oh, good.
So I think the superb, but yeah, I guess that's the problem with Twitter, dude. Is everything gets lost in translation. Like what you read, going ... going and then you hear him on a podcast, and you're like, oh, I guess he meant it. But yeah, I don't see. July 15th was the last thing that Christopher Mellon tweeted out. He has not put any support behind this office, and I'm curious if Elizondo has. I'm gonna guess no.
Another question I have is, so the 2023 NDAA that we are kind of excited for because it mentioned transmedium and some other aspects. Does that add anything now? Is that even needed, or do we have what we want here with this new office?
Well, the other office is its own thing. It's separate from the AARO office. They report to each other, but they're two completely different. They would be two completely different things if it gets signed into law. We're talking about the underwater synchronization.
Yeah. Yes.
That's not an office yet, but that's what the bill. It just passed the House. and now a version of it's going to go through the Senate, and then they're going to vote on it later in the year, and then whatever the final verbiage of that is, we'll know by the end of the year. But my understanding is that is a whole completely independent office that's overseen by the IG. So, and the defense secretary, and there was one other person I can't think of off the top of my head, but it had to report to different people than that this office is reporting to.
I feel like it might be a little bit more vague and unclear than that, though, right? Because now I'm trying to remember what the Gillibrand Amendment was talking about, and I think the Gillibrand Amendment, which was passed, I think that did have AARO or something like that as the office name that was going to be created, and then in response to that, or before it passed, the DoD came out and said, "Hey, we're creating this AOI MSG," and then that was kind of it. There was no AARO, right? Because
and
this new office kind of.
I think the Gillibrand Amendment, that's what it is. This new is another office, including this one. I think I have a feeling if there was,
I hope so.
I hope so, because our understanding last year was we're getting two offices. We're getting one from the Department of Defense that Lou Elizondo hates because it's coming from the same people that gave him a hard time, and then we're getting another office that's going to be created by, well, this time it'll be Rubio and Gallego, and I'm sure Gillibrand will have a say on the Senate side of things. But yeah, I think they're going to have two different offices that report. One's going to report directly to Congress, whereas this one reports, basically reports to itself. Like, it's like, hey, Department of Defense, what did you get today? Well, Department of Defense, let me tell you, and I think
to John Greenwald with a lot of black text.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that it's like John Greenwald said, it's going to leave a huge paper trail. But here's the bottom line: nobody knows what this office is going to produce. We have to wait and see.
Yeah,
we have to wait and see. And
what are your hopes for the first report?
My hopes for the first report. And that's a great question.
Something actually compelling.
Yeah, something compelling would be nice. Although I feel like the first report is going to be. I'm not putting any expectations on this first report because I'm going to give them a pass. I'm going to give them a pass on the first report. Second report, you better be coming with something good.
Hopefully,
you better be coming with something good, because by the second report, the office will have been established for over a year. And also remember that this office, if I'm not mistaken, is going to have quarterly classified briefings. So I think Moultrie will be giving classified briefings 4 times a year, and then you'll probably see him whipped out with Kirkpatrick once a year for the public report. My guess.
Hopefully.
Yeah, my hope is that we get. I don't think we'll get much for the first report, but I hope what we do get is the number of incidents broken down by domain, right? Wouldn't that be interesting if we knew, how many undersea versus how many space versus how many air anomalies we're detecting?
Man, I gotta tell you, the thing that really just I keep coming back to is nobody was talking about this USO thing. Nobody was asking for this. Nobody never came out of Mellon. It never came out of Elizondo. It never came out of any TV show. I mean, they lightly touched on it in Unidentified season 1 with the
whole observable. One of them was transmedium, though, right?
Yeah, no, of course it's part of the discussion. But what I'm saying is, like, all the major legislation up until that moment in the public hearing where they're like, undersea anomalies, let's take this to classified setting. Like, we can't talk about this. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa, wait a second. And then we get the new office proposal for an office that looks at just undersea anomalies and is required to get reportings from everyone, the CIA, the Navy, the Air Force. So yeah, I think that's good. We're going to get 2 offices. Again, we're getting 2 offices. And I think that, again, it's confusing because nobody knows. Like, this second bill, we're going to have an office this time, a second office this time next year, if the bill goes through and gets signed into law as is. And so far, like we said, at least on the House side, went through 0 debate about the bill. So hopefully the verbiage goes through and we get the another office that And again, like, yeah, 2 offices is better than 1. That's more data. That's more paper trails for John Greenwald to go down. Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, competition on who can resolve the UFOs first, right?
Right. And God, man, and also a new acronym came out of this. UAUP, unidentified aerial undersea phenomena. I believe that's what it's.
I liked USO from back in the day.
It kind of covers all 3, but I think AARO so far has most eloquently sort of
call them anomalies.
These things. Like they put it all in one nice little package, I think. But damn.
Something you mentioned earlier about the last congressional hearing that was televised, they mentioned undersea things. It was a sentence, and now there's this language in this group now, but there's so much between the lines there that your kind of imagination kind of fills in. And I think that's something to be aware of. They use this language, and then your mind goes in this direction. You know what I mean?
Right.
Don't get your hopes up. Don't get your hopes up. I am really curious to see what comes out of this. I look forward to any public hearings. Anything that we get to see will be at least really interesting.
Right.
Definitely.
Is that Chanel giving us our 5-minute warning there, rather, in the private chat?
Yeah.
I'm looking up I wanted to just play something for you guys real quick because I thought this was so awesome, and I think I'm gonna ask his permission, but I wanted to share this with everybody. It was something that Ben Scarborough made, and I want to play it anytime we have a James Webb Telescope update. So check it out. How freaking cool is that?
Very cool. That's who does your graphic design, I take it?
No, but it feels like somebody did, right? Like it fits my show perfectly. I was like, oh my God, that looks like public access TV. Well, Jesus, dude, like I want this. This is so awesome. But I just wanted, it was a gentleman. Sorry, let me just look it up real quick again. He's on Twitter. You can find him, Ben Scarborough.
It's really awesome. I like that a lot.
SCARBOROUGH. Ben
Gotcha.
Scarborough.
Cool.
And so the one thing I wanted to, because we never got to touch on the James Webb Telescope, which was there's a lot of things, man. Fitting everything into a 2-hour show, going down to one show.
We didn't even talk about the basement office either. Yeah.
We didn't talk about the
That's true.
basement
That
office.
was good.
Jeez, man.
You guys watch it?
Yeah,
I did. Okay, let me.
Very
I'm
good.
just gonna ask right now. Rather, do you have an extra half hour we could go into overtime today? You want to talk about that, or do you got something to do?
yeah, I could do that.
Okay, Nick. No, obviously no obligation here. You can stick around. You can just get out of here. But we could end the show on KGRA DB at 6:55. We'll play the credits and we'll take a little hot second break. We'll come back. We'll keep it live. We'll keep it rolling. And we'll get into the Stephen Greenstreet. We have to talk about it, right? Because
it was really excellent. I'd
pretty
love to
damn
hang
good.
around and talk about it.
Sounds good to me. All right, so that's what we're going to do, you guys. This is going to be our first UCR overtime. So don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. We're going to.
I mean, we still got like 4.
We still got 4
minutes
2 minutes
to fill.
Well, no, wait, do we? What's our 57? Okay, we're 57. All right. So we got a few minutes here. So we'll. What were we talking about before we brought up Greenstreet?
James Webb.
James Webb tells. Yeah, James Webb. Okay, so all right, let me whip out this video of James Webb because I thought this was really cool and sort of put in perspective as to how powerful this telescope is. It is freaking awesome. Were you going to say something, rather?
No, I thought you were just going to show the same video again, but it sounds like you got something else.
Oh yeah, no, not that one. This is something different. So this was made by. Here, let me zoom in on this for you guys. Space 8K, and it's a zoom in to the Southern Ring Nebula captured by the James Webb Space Telescope. I'll blow this up so we can sort of get a real perspective on this. Can you guys hear the sound on this?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll mute it. So okay, so this is like where the picture starts, and it's zooming in on just one. Like, this is pretty amazing, and I gotta say, the James Webb Telescope, oddly enough, made me. For me, it made the universe so much smaller. It feels like things are a lot more reachable now. Is that crazy?
Yes.
Yeah, I felt like that was a crazy
Go
thought.
back and touch the beginning, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, we're going back, what was it, almost 80 billion years to the Big Bang, and before the Big Bang, I think, was it 78 billion years ago? Is my number
I think
right on that?
3.6 billion.
3.6 billion? Okay.
I don't know about that. I thought
3.6 sounds a little young. Yeah, I think it's almost 80 billion years back. And yeah, maybe Google it. Let's Google. Let's get this right.
13.8 billion years old.
13. Okay, we were way off. Okay, I was definitely way off. Okay, so 13.8 billion years ago. I mean, I don't know, man. To me, it just it almost felt like being a kid on a bicycle and discovering a new block and going, oh, wow, there's more to this. And it's not far. I don't know. I know these are insanely far distances, but it just, to me, it felt like it made everything more reachable. I was not expecting that feeling, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, all that light that we saw is 13 billion years old. It's taking it that long for that light to travel. And then those pictures are just, what they say, a grain of sand at arm's length.
Right.
That's such a small view of the sky. And look at how many galaxies they showed. I made this comment on Twitter. It almost feels like the universe is so big. How would these ET find us?
Right.
In this, just like for every grain of sand on a beach. You know what I mean? I mean, life could be really plentiful in the universe too, but I mean, it's huge. It's
we're not special.
It's unfathomable. We're definitely not special. But on that note, like I said, stick around. We'll hang out for another half hour. We'll talk about Stephen Greenstreet. Thank you guys so much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Your home for credible news, reviews, commentary on everything UAP and UFO. Thank you, Chanel, for being our producer today. And yeah, that's it, you guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of the day. We love you all. Peace. All right, we're back. Let's do this. Let's bring on Rather. Rather, did your camera go out?
Yeah, my camera's been overheating in these
Let me ask
hot
you.
Seattle summers.
I think I've been meaning to ask you this because I think we have a similar camera, right? So Sony.
Yeah, Sony A.
Yeah. Well, Sony. you power it obviously through a battery that plugs in, right?
Correct. Yes.
Do you shut your camera off and unplug that battery when the show's done?
I shut it off. I usually don't unplug the battery.
Do both.
Yeah.
Do both.
Yeah.
Because
interesting.
what I've been doing is, because when my camera starts doing funky stuff, it's getting really hot, is because I forget to shut the camera off after the show and I just leave it on. So it'll stay on for the whole week.
Even charging probably heats up the battery, starts it from
absolutely
cold.
Well, it also just heats up the internal circuit boards. So it's going to run slow if it's hot, So
yeah.
I just because that's something that took me a while to figure out. I'm like, damn. And every once in a while I still forget to shut the camera off. Anyway, behind the scenes stuff. But what do you expect? This is the first UCR overtime. So welcome. We talked about this last week. Last week we ended up using the whole show to talk about one thing. And sometimes that happens, right? Like, and we're bummed because we wanted to talk about the James Webb Telescope. We wanted to talk about the Mick West, Eric Weinstein debate. We didn't even get to touch on these today. Like, for example, today, I totally forgot about your Adam Schiff question. Like, I can't believe we forgot about that. Like, that's how much news has been happening, though, this last dude, summer has been lit.
Yeah.
Has been lit.
Yeah. Jubilant July, or was it Jubilant June for last year?
Jubilant June for last year. Well, I put Joyous July this time on Twitter a couple days ago. But like, damn, dude, if this was last year, we'd be losing our collective shit. And I think that's partly because, I don't know, for me, I felt more in good standing with the community this show. With the community, the community is so large. There's so many different parts of it, different conversations happening in it. But like, I felt like the camaraderie, we had just done the phone home. We were going into the second one. Like, there was a lot of good momentum, goodwill. Like, and the whole point of the phone home was to put your personal bullshit to the side. And for one day, come to the table, the same table, all of us, and try to do something good for the conversation. Like, we all can argue till we're blue in the face, and that's fine. We could go back to that if you want. But at least for one day, let's all come together and point up, right? Like, point our fingers up and point our attention at one place at one time and ask for something. And I think that caught the community off guard at first. And because they didn't know me, they didn't know, what I was all about, what I was trying to do. And I still believe these things. Like, I still believe that we should put all of our differences to the side, and try to come together and pass this message along. I mean, perfect example, Katie Howard. Katie Howard is very good friends and does shows in the New York Supper Club with Sean Roche, who really doesn't like me. But I don't care about that stuff. Like, if you're going to do something positive that helps the conversation, I'm going to help promote it. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to try and champion it no matter what. And I think, we should all try and do that. We should all aspire to do that. And, I don't know, the expectations this year for me on the big phone home I'm going to set them super low. Super low, but we are organizing it. I'm super excited about the guest list. It's a lot simpler. And I think our requests are going to be so much more razor sharp. I'm really excited about our requests this year because now we've got offices to direct our questions to. We've got a lot more has happened between the last phone home and now. And
yeah, I mean, in some ways not, though, right? Like, we were all very optimistic that something was really big was going to be right around the corner a year ago. And
I said 2023 was going to be the year, and I said 2022 is going to be great. We're going to get new offices, we're going to get new legislation, and all of that stuff happened.
That's fair. Yeah, you did say you did.
Like, I've always tried to manage expectations, even though I get excited about these bills and we talk through these things, but like, we've always tried to manage expectations here, always. And I think 2023 is going to be a fun year. I think, look, if I want, just going back to answer your question from earlier, like, I want the full versions of the videos we have, the things we already know that are public. Give us the full versions. the different angles. If we have different angles of it, we know the videos exist. We know where they were shot. We know what equipment they're using. So what's with all the secrecy? That'd be my first question for Mr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Like, give us that. You owe us that. After 7 now years, we're almost at, right? 2017, 5 years. We're 5, almost probably going on 6 years in December, I think, right? Am I wrong? I don't know. Whatever. 5-6 years. Like we should have that. We should have that. It would add a lot of clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see
what you got. What are you hesitating about?
Well, I mean, I wonder if they have it, right? If they actually have these extra minutes of videos, and I mean, maybe they had it at one point, but it didn't persist, right?
I don't think they have it, but I think they have its. They definitely have some stuff that we'd love to see, right? I think they
23-minute video now, 19-minute video that we know from the IG report. Some other things like that.
I know grammatically that doesn't make any sense, but I feel like they have. Again, I don't think they have an answer, but man, I think they have a pretty good idea, or a hypothesis.
They at least have more detail.
And if they don't have, they definitely have more detail, but and again, this is still groundbreaking, unbelievable news. They have figured something out. And they're trying their best to cover it up for another 20 years with something like this, which I think is also very, very possible. And that's not disappointing. To me, that's super exciting because, oh my God, humans have figured out
that'd be the best.
We're going to label this technology. I don't know if it would be anti-gravity, 0-point technology, whatever, gravitational warping. I don't know, but would be cool. Anyway, let's get to a couple of comments that we had and questions. First of all, Matthew Riot for $2 said, Nick, how do you take such cool pics? What is TINS for the win?
The Invisible Night School.
Oh, okay. All right. That's the acronym. Dude, there's too many acronyms, and I'm terrible with stuff.
Don't
like
look at me now.
Well, for you too, Nick. Lou, is Nick frozen for you?
Nick, Nick is a little. Yeah, he is frozen. Nick, if you want to pop out and pop back in, that should fix it. No, I mean pop out of the
refresh out of the
StreamYard. Exit the room. Yeah, there you go. He's got it. Leia here with a $5 donation. Thank you so much, my lady. Says the Hudson Valley Flap is also a story of the emergence of modern myth, same as Communion, 1987 too. Did you see this comment from Leia?
Am I frozen still?
No, you're good.
Oh, perfect.
You're good now. Yeah, that always fixes it.
Same as Communion. The emergence of modern myth. Well, yeah. I mean, we were speaking to that earlier, right? This story, this proto meme, as I was calling it, kind of did start building, and now it's passed traditionally, among the UFO enthusiasts as this kind of campfire story. So yeah, same with Communion. In fact, Whitley Strieber was somewhat involved in the later investigation of this, along with Peter Gersten, if you're familiar with him, that UFO lawyer he was the founder of that previous anti-disclosure movement. The name's escaping me right now. Buddy Hopkins was there. All these people. It's interesting. You see, there's these groups that seem to persist in UFO circles. Yeah. We have a current group like that now. Actually, they go way back. With Hal Puthoff and stuff. That kind of leads into Green Street's new video, though.
Man, I wonder why there's such a fear of calling them out.
I'm not afraid of that.
I'm assuming it's the access, right? I'm saying I'm talking about, people who have shows, or, are newsmen. Why hasn't Tyler Rogaway written an article on the people to avoid in this conversation? Or the things, maybe not even so much the people to avoid, maybe that's too directional, but maybe something along the lines of things to look out for. if you ever hear this, you know,
almost everyone.
Yeah, it is. It's getting it's.
My
Man,
philosophy on all of this, and this applies to everything. Keep an open mind, but require conclusive evidence to believe something. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's that distinction between open-mindedness and gullibility.
Yeah.
I know skeptics get a lot of flack for being allegedly closed-minded, but I think that when you talk to a lot of the true believers, they won't accept anything except for their preconceived notion, and that's being closed-minded, right? Be open to any possibility, whether it is, you know, ET, it's in vehicles, or it's some kind of consciousness related thing, or ultra dimensional, or time travelers, or any of that stuff. Sure, but convince me, right?
Yeah.
You know, show me something that's truly compelling, that's conclusive, and then I'll champion it all day.
Well, is there? Let me ask, because I always think of it from the point of like, I think both sides, both the experiencers and the skeptics, need to just chill and just relax. Okay,
Yeah.
like I've had an experience, and I've come to a point now where I tell people, you know, look, if you want to hear my experience, I will more than happy to tell you. And but before I do, like, you have to know that I'm not trying to tell you this as fact, and I'm not putting this on the table as proof. And all I ask is that you respect me and do the same back, you know? So like, absolutely. If you're a fellow experiencer, like, unfortunately, like, our stories are just that. They're stories, they're anecdotes. They are, I think, a data point.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You know, they're, and I think it's a data point that can be used in future investigations, along with other data points. I think there's something there, obviously, right? I have to. But yeah, I think both sides can just do with a good, try and put yourself in the shoes of the other person and see why the way you're putting it may come off as offensive or off-putting. Well, I don't know what we're getting.
That's evangelizing, right? Like, you don't really need to convince other people that that believe the same thing as you, right? People can believe different things, and that's totally all right.
Yeah,
right. True. There is no, like, I hate the right, like this. I've come to, I don't want to say hate, but I don't like this phrase, the right side of history. Like, when it comes to this topic, you know, we have no idea what history is gonna
no one sees
say about this topic, you know. Like, I
think if
UFOs aren't just gonna save the believers if that they come down.
If you find yourself saying that, take a step back and reflect. I think, because I mean, I was on the other side of that before. Like I said, I was purely cynical. I wasn't open to anything, you know. I had my mind made up. And the moment I realized that, that's when I stopped, because I realized I wasn't doing myself any favors, and I wasn't contributing anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I always self-reflect.
I feel like I'm an anomaly. I've seen one of these things up close and personal, right in my face. But yet I convinced myself that, oh my God, these things are 100% real. There's nothing you could ever tell me that will ever change my mind of that. To, I am now questioning to what I saw. Like,
well,
you know, and rightfully so. But there's only one other person I speak to on any sort of consistent basis that was there when it happened. And I think there's other things I could do to maybe chase down the story and maybe get some resolution to it. It wouldn't be very difficult. I just have to get my ass over there. but yeah, I don't know. I just want people to try and just think as rationally as possible, and allow yourself to get excited, but at the same time, don't let that excitement turn into hope or a belief. You know, just always be prepared to be disappointed, because you have to, whatever the new information provides is what we have to go with. But anyway, I don't want to get lost in this. Let's get to some more comments. Hey, Rather, can you part your hair to the left, or is it only to the right? It's bugged me about folks with that hairdo. I'm sorry. Mysteries of the universe, he says, according to about your hair.
It might actually be the other direction because of the mirror reversal on this camera. So take that for what it's worth.
Sparky Lady said, check NOTAMs too. Nowadays, you can sometimes see notice the airmen about his this kind of activity. I think she was referring. This was from earlier in our conversation about the flap. Let's see here, Leah with a $10 donation, and thank you so much. James Webb Telescope isn't showing higher res images, it's showing entirely new things. Yes, James Webb Telescope can see further into the light spectrum and thus see older, further away objects entirely invisible to Hubble.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a beautiful and I had this lined up for like 2 shows ago, but I have no idea where I put everything now. But I have the comparison from what Hubble sees to what James Webb sees.
We're also going to like see through dust, essentially, things that are obscuring the other, light wavelengths. So the infrared can go right through it, so it can essentially see through some things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did read, it's already been smacked by like a pebble, and then I saw somewhere in the news in the news stream the other day that it got hit again.
Oh.
It's still performing better than they anticipated, so that's good. And they did plan for a number of these micrometeors to hit it, so it's not unexpected. I think that maybe one of them was bigger than they anticipated, but here's hoping that
there's contingency.
No more.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that was like one of my things when I was like, wait a second, they're putting it in the darkest part of our solar system, essentially, as far as we can get it. Man, like. Because I've read about, you've seen those pictures of the plate like this thick that a micro asteroid went through, and it looks like a shrapnel from a major weapon. I don't know, AK-49. People are gonna freak out that I got that wrong.
Nerds, who cares?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But yeah, you know what I mean. Like I was like, damn, dude. Godspeed. I hope that thing lasts more than a year. I really do. Like, I really, really do.
But I mean, that's what they're doing. Their most important science missions in the first year, just because of that. They're front loading it with things that they think are going to be most impactful. So I think the first year is going to be the most amazing year of James Webb.
I'm surprised they haven't figured out some sort of deflection system for that,
like force fields.
Yeah, like I remember like when the first early conversation of going to Mars, they were saying, the most dangerous part is like, something the size of a grain of sand rips through your entire hull, and boom, everybody's dead. And it was like, okay, well, we'd have to figure out a force field to get to Mars of some kind. Like,
let's get on that.
That's why I think Elon Musk, like I haven't seen anything about how he's going to protect getting there.
He's allowed to talk.
Yeah. There's a lot of unexplained and undone steps there.
Where's the Cybertruck?
Great picture floating around about him on a yacht. Eventide with a $5 donation. I just want this new office to let us know if something is unambiguously strange, as Zach Saichi says. That's the big question.
Yeah. 100%.
Agreed.
I'd love to see it.
And I'm excited that Zach Saichi is getting back into the conversation as well. I knew he wouldn't be able to stay out long. I knew it. He said he quit and then he came back. But anyway, okay, we've got a few minutes and we haven't even talked about what we wanted to talk about.
Skinwalker Ranch.
Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah. So I wish this had come out before we interviewed Brandon Fugel, because one question I would have loved to ask Brandon would have been, what do you think about the owners, the 60 years of ownership with nothing, and then you get the Sherman family come in, and the first month they're there, they're seeing UFOs, and then Bigelow buys it for $200,000, and then all of a sudden we got werewolves, portals, and dino beavers. And interesting thing that I sort of overlooked is he bought it for $200,000. I know it's a delicate question, but I'm curious to know what Brandon Fugel bought it for.
That would be interesting to know.
I have a feeling Bigelow made a profit. I would imagine just the value of real estate would have gone up. Sorry, go ahead.
Fortunately, I actually did ask Brandon Fugel that question quite a while ago, because I was I was talking about that. How about how the previous owners, 60 some years never really reported anything. And his response to that was that there was reported activity and there was police reports. Now, if you look at Jack Brewer's blog, he goes into this a little bit. No one can really produce those police records. No one's actually seen them. There's one former deputy who told some stories. I think it was on an episode of that show. I haven't personally watched it before.
Yeah.
But that is the consensus. And if you think about that, anywhere in the United States has sightings going back through history. You know what I mean? Just look at New Fork or MUFON's maps. Every state, every city's got a list of sightings. That doesn't necessarily correlate to a spooky haunted ranch, right? So, yeah, it does kind of paint that Scooby-Doo picture of those, the Shermans. That was their real name, right? They had a pseudonym in the book. It seems like it's all coming from the Shermans, kind of like an Amityville horror situation, if you're familiar.
Right.
So,
what were you thinking?
Well, I have pulled up a police reporter. There's a Utah News, I think in the 60s, of like a UFO report. But yeah, to your point, there's probably that for any given geographic region. You're going to find something like that.
What's that UFO sticker website? Check out your neighborhood.
There's a great website called updb.com. UPDB. And you could put in date, location, district, country, and it'll give you all of the unknown reports from that area. And I was looking for mine in 1993. I'll share my screen. Hopefully it doesn't slow down my camera, but this is one of the coolest tools I've ever seen in this conversation. It's super simple, but you put in the date, the city, district, whatever, and then you click on it, and these are all the MUFON reports, New Fork reports in Davie, Florida, and here are the dates from 20. These are the newest ones. The older ones are at the bottom, but there's really, really cool stories. One was tubular. You could see the triangle in one picture. Oh shit, I haven't seen this one. It might be cool, but anyway, so they're things, those tools are out there.
Yeah. Well, but again, like I said, find me a spot in this continent where you haven't had sightings of something weird, right? It happens all over the place to everyone. It's the same thing with, I always go back to ghosts. That was kind of my primary focus back when I was doing the Bent Spoon. They always talk about if someone died on this land, someone died in this house. Well, yeah. Of course they did. People died everywhere. Every square inch probably has a dead person on it. So keep that in mind when you hear claims like that.
Go ahead, Riley.
Well, I mean, what really kind of struck me from Stephen Greenstreet's reporting was how little NIDS seemed to actually experience, right? They talked about in the first year, there was no activity, and they called it off because in the last 2.5 years, there was no activity. They had, Jack Vallee's journal essentially says that, no UFOs. We didn't see any UFOs that we were expecting. What's going on? So my question is kind of who actually did see the weird stuff with NIDS?
Well, to be fair here, like I said, I don't believe in any of the claims of Skinwalker Ranch, but it's my understanding that while Bigelow was writing the checks, I am under the impression he was actually quite stingy. So these people in NIDS would put in requests for high resolution cameras and trackers on the cattle and things like this. And it's like, yeah, you can do it, but it has to be like $25 a pop, so that it did restrict it a little bit. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
To be fair to those people.
Well, and Brandon mentioned that yesterday when we spoke to him. He was like, when we got there, there was there wasn't even an automatic gate. There was one camera and one tower, and that was basically it.
Sure.
And he's dumped, I think he said over $100,000 into all the new camera systems and equipment that they put on there. So yeah, man, I found it very interesting though that NIDS didn't find anything. Like,
Well,
and I think it was sort of, it's kind of sounds like our UFO flap from earlier, where it's coming from one part of the story, and but I don't know. Just because we've had some interesting conversations with Brandon, but outside of Brandon Fugel, we've had some interesting conversations with people that have been to that ranch, and that'll never go back to that ranch. So
I think that's an interesting contradiction. I mean, Nick, you kind of gave maybe a potential answer for it, that Bigelow might have just been stingy and not really spent enough money to capture the evidence.
Sure,
but why were NIDS not able to really capture anything? And Brandon is saying that he's capturing all the evidence, right? Evidence of UFOs in the skies, and
maybe different people have different standards of evidence, right?
Sure.
But, I mean, what were NIDS and the current people in Skinwalker Ranch, are they investigating the claims from the Shermans, or are they just sitting out there with a bunch of gadgets trying to detect anomalies in Ghost Hunter show cookie cutter format, right? Are they what are the claims? Bulletproof wolves? Don't test that, please. Don't shoot them. Right? What are the other ones?
Portals in the sky.
Portals.
Bigfoot.
People like a being crawling out of it and stuff. I mean, how do you investigate a claim like that? You can sit around and wait for it to happen, I suppose.
Well, I think what's interesting is that Stephen Greenstreet gave a special thank you to Brandon Fugel at the end. His name was in the credits, which I found interesting. And
he went to the ranch.
Yeah, he went to the ranch. Yeah, but also I think, and we're gonna have Chris Bartell on. I think we're gonna get the real version of what happened. I mean, he's basically said it on Ryan Sprague's channel, but I mean, him and Carl Vibe have been doing some good work out in the Uintah Basin area, debunking stuff, and coming and finding the explanations to what seemed very, very mysterious at first glance, which is awesome. And the idea that they called themselves out on it, like, hey, and now Chris Bartell is telling stories of, working on the ranch and being pressured to come up with data, and that his colleagues were making shit up and turning it into the boss, who was big, and then blowing a copy and send it to I believe, DOD. And so, they were like, we need results if we're going to keep getting funding. And so they started making up stories about portals and about werewolves and about dino beavers. Well, we were Chris Bartell the whole time he was there. I mean, the only thing that Chris Bartell saw, and he did have those moments of like, man, something's weird. Something feels like the skin, your hair stand up on your skin, the sort of thing, you're being watched. And he's also, he came across some tracks that went on for a very long time. The show did not do a very good explanation of the pictures he took of those wolf tracks, those big paw prints. But Chris Bartell, he's like, yeah, all that is bullshit. I was on the ranch for 4 years. We had very little funding, just like you said just now. Bigelow was cheap. They had to come up with different experiments on their own. I think they had a Ouija board there. They had little just very simple sort of, oh, look, it moved kind of experiments. But
you got
nothing ever moved. Nothing. Yeah. So, and what's funny is Brandon is kind of going along with Carl and Chris as far as their research, what they're finding and what they're saying, which is interesting because it's a juxtaposition. Brandon's finding all this stuff, they're getting all this stuff for the TV show, which we've questioned, I think, pretty damn well. And we even got Brandon to admit we need to do better explaining the science aspect of this because it's not coming across in the show clearly.
And if they have controls for the experiments, they should probably be showing these too. But we
should
do have to keep
price
in
it.
mind that this is a TV show.
It is a TV show for sure. But I think, to me, I think science is entertaining.
Yeah.
Like I think you can make it entertaining. But go ahead, Rather. You got something to say?
Well, I mean, it is a TV show, but then Brandon's also kind of pointing to the TV show as the data and the real science. Just look at the TV show, and even that wouldn't bother me if it wasn't the fact that their lead scientist was the lead guy that was investigating UFOs for the government. So I feel like it just doesn't really paint a very good picture for who and how people are researching this stuff.
Especially when he was hacking The Secret. That's just me. But and he was also doubling down.
There you go, dunking on people again, Nick Coffin-Callis. you do it. You be doing like Air Jordan from a free throw line dunks. I'm just kidding. Yeah, man. I think Stephen Greenstreet, Stephen Greenstreet, did an amazing job. Like I know he's a lightning rod, and there have been things that I think there have been things he said and done to people that have been really harsh. That's my only beef with him is he comes off very.
He's a bit of a troll. He's trying to get reactions out of people.
He's trying to get reactions out of people. I mean, he works at the New York Post. I like his work.
Yeah, exactly.
It's edited sharply. It's a really well. It almost reminds me of a Dave Chappelle sort of special, where he's trying to tell you his what he went through, the people he knew, and the experiences he's had, and the complete changing of his mind, and the people that aren't listening to what he's saying are getting really mad. And the people who are rationally kind of looking at it are going, damn, well, that makes sense.
A lot of good points. Yeah.
It makes a lot of good points. And And I got it. Well, hold on. Let me finish this. George Knapp.
Yeah, that was.
I'm getting that feeling in my stomach that we talked about earlier in the show about being disappointed.
Sure.
And here's my thing. Is nobody is going to say this except maybe this show, there are other shows that'll say it, but they'll be very crude and they'll have a bunch of F-bombs, attached to it. And they'll make claims that have nothing to do. They'll compare George Knapp to, the worst of society. And I'm not going to do that here, but
I don't know.
This is bullshit. And you shouldn't be writing books. And I loved how Greenstreet took that interview on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And highlighted.
There's
no proof.
No. There's no proof, but he claims there's evidence in the book that he wrote.
Yep. Yep. Which is a pure contradiction. And I did a review before any of you guys are on the show with about Joe Rogan and George Knapp discussion. And the first thing that came across to me, and I noticed this with a lot of very well-respected UFO people in the community, they have verbal diarrhea. They are trying to hit, and I'm guilty of this too. This has happened to me, where people are asking, you've got this opportunity, this moment to try and tell people what the hell's going on with this, right? And you've got so many dates, so many people, so many classified briefings, so many stories from credible people, so many investigations that you've done, that it manifests itself into the microphone as verbal diarrhea. And when you ask a question, you get 14 different rants about 20 different things, which is how do you even do that? And that's what I took away from that interview was George. I felt George was really trying to prove to Joe Rogan that this is real. And he's like, look, I brought you these documents, and then Bob Lazar, and then this, and then that. dude, I just asked you if there's any evidence. You know, like, and you know, I'm like conflicted because I like George Knapp. I like George Knapp. I think he's done some good stuff, but I think there's at this point between Bob Lazar and Skinwalker Ranch, I'm done with George Knapp.
That's fair to come to. You were saying earlier about Green Street being kind of a lightning rod. What I can say to that is Green Street's work, he cites all of his sources and he shows you how he came to those conclusions. The feedback, the negative feedback I see towards his work is completely about his behavior. Yeah. And I mean, are we policing people's behavior? I see that as a common criticism.
No, it's not policing. But look, man, Jerry's getting perfect, but damn, his message is really angry and sometimes hard to swallow, even for me.
Yeah, he's an edgelord.
People keep using that term. I have no idea what the hell that means. And I do know what it means, but like, he's just.
Well, it's also a common criticism of Mick West, right? It's a lot about his behavior. They say he comes off
his resting Mick face.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, like, if you've talked to Mick, I don't think he's an asshole. He seems like a really patient, nice guy.
Well, the first time I talked to him, he laughed at me, and I called him out on it.
Fair enough.
You know, and that pissed me off. Like, I mean, I feel like you're making fun of me. Like, and nobody ever wants to feel like that, even if you are smarter than me. I don't care if you're smarter than me. I'm never trying to be the smartest guy in the room. I just want to have fun conversations and try to get a more understanding about the world around me. You know, but I don't know, man. I just I feel like you're in a lot of, here's what it is. Stephen Greenstreet, I think, beefs down too much.
Yeah,
I love when he beefs up. Like, I like when he beefs at George Knapp and asks him tough questions. I like when he asks tough questions of people that are in this arena. I don't like when I just don't like when he goes. I don't know, man. It's just the tone. It's the tone, I guess.
He gets a lot of shit 24/7.
Yeah,
you know. So I mean,
it sucks because, in a way, it's like, and I'm sure I'll hear something about this, but a way it's like Steve Cambion. So I can't watch a show. Cannot watch it.
I've never seen it.
Cannot watch. It's so whatever. I'm not going to get into the reasons why.
Not really
familiar. Every once in a while, he'll say something really great. He'll say something smart, like, and I found this out through the Theories of Everything interview, Kurt J. Mungle and Linda Moulton Howe. And his question was a question before mine, and I had no idea about Linda Moulton Howe pushing a video game cover as a picture of a real alien on the moon. And then when she was called out on it, she dug her heels in and doubled down. And it was like, I had no idea about that. And I probably would have if the messenger of that revelation, of that piece of information, wasn't hard to listen to, or you know, congruent with my hey, just be cool philosophy of life. Try and be cool. I understand. No, I don't have to like it. But I love his work. Exactly. I want to talk about it more. I want to promote it more. I want to be a champion of it. But at the same time, I don't want to champion really just nasty people. Why would I do that?
Well, I don't think Green Street's necessarily a nasty person. I wouldn't characterize him like that. But
I mean, he can be. He can be. You know, he's. I mean, like I was like, I thought he did great work on his first episode. I can't remember what my comment was, but it was in support of his video, and he snapped at me. I was like, dude, I'm on your side here. Like, what are you getting? Like, why are you coming at me like that? You know, and he just does that a lot, man. I don't know.
Well, it wasn't at the end where you were asking him if he was a felon, was it?
No, definitely not. And look, you know, like that was a whole moment in the show.
That was the thing.
But it didn't come from a mean place.
Sure.
It didn't come from a place of I'm trying to slam dunk on you. It was coming from a place of trying to clean up the image that is being purported through the internet.
Right.
Like he gets a lot of this. Like, when he was coming on the show, that's all we got.
Absolutely.
Like all the comments from people were just like, well, you gonna ask him about the time he said this or the time he did that, or what about his racism or this? And I was just like, I don't believe any of this. Like, I don't believe any of this. And I'd rather try and clear it up than add to it. And because I love his work, like this.
Well, there's so much ad hominem attacks, right? Like people will attack the person rather than attack the argument. And I think that they do that with Stephen Greenstreet all the time.
Yeah, but I just wish he wouldn't make it so easy. I wish it was, and I hate to keep using this example, but like a Tyler Rogaway or a Gaddy Schwartz that produced this. It would have been gangbusters how much people would have shared it. And that's, I guess, my point.
I don't know. I don't know if these people would share it, if it goes against their beliefs. I think that it goes deeper than just, Stephen Greenstreet's personality.
I think it'd be shared by me.
You don't feel this episode, Stephen Greenstreet stuff worth sharing?
I copied it, and I watched it right before the show, so I haven't had a chance to really decide if I was going to share it, but I did copy the link, getting ready to share it because I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And it's new information that's being brought to the table that is changing my way of thinking, which I think is so goddamn valuable.
Yeah.
But you're losing people with the way you talk to them.
I haven't seen him talk to much of anybody lately.
No, not lately. I'm just saying, just past regression. I don't know, man. I just, even as something as simple as like, hey, I'm sorry if I've come off like a dick in the last 2 years. This story's taken me for a loop emotionally. And it has, you could see it. Like, this story has taken Stephen Greenstreet through the ringer. And now and I feel, and this is the thing we bonded on, is this idea of the community hates you now because you went against the hero. You went against the legend. You went against the American patriot. And it's like, we're not going against it. We're just questioning it. We're just trying to question it. And
How
so I
dare
can,
you?
And I understand his point of view, and why people hate him. It's more of the hero's question, and that doesn't feel good. That makes them get that feeling in their stomach of like, oh no. Yep. And they don't like that. And I guess the bottom line is we're never going to change those folks, right? I mean, all you could do, lead a horse to water, and if they drink, great. If they don't, it's on the horse, I guess. But after this part one, we're going to get into part two. There's 4 parts. And God, here's what I hate. I wish the whole season was done and we could just binge this because I'm dying for the next episode. And again, my respect level for Stephen Greenstreet is so high, and his work shines, man. It really does. And he's really good at what he does. He really is. And George Knapp, shame on you for not responding to those questions. You should answer those questions. That's a contradiction, the book and what you said. And let's get the story straight. And is there evidence of this? According to you, there's not.
Compelling evidence.
So why are we reporting this to the Pentagon? Why are we writing a book about this? Why are we propagating this as facts?
Why indeed? Circled back around to that, right?
It's
your audience has an expectation, I mean, what's he known for? He's the UFO journalist, right?
No, he's a UFO journalist. But here's the thing, though, is George has also had, UFO journalism is 5% of everything he's reported on being a newsman.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not.
His colleagues and stuff too.
No, for sure.
To be fair to George Knapp, I think he was pretty upfront about the whole what OSAP really was from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Say that about
No, he was. No, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there are parts of it that I think are reported really well, especially his like the Russian files that he reported on when he went over to Russia and looked at their UFO files. I thought that stuff was really great, and there was no like story that went along with it, you know. Like there was no like Bob Lazar-esque for like versions
Right.
of the stuff he found in Russia. You know, it was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big problem is just being afraid or reluctant to admit that you're wrong, right? You might get suckered, and then you report something, but and then some people will dig their heels in when confronted with that. I think that the better thing to do is to admit your mistakes and move on.
That can be hard.
Well, and I think, and that's why I love Stephen Greenstreet, because that's exactly what he did.
True. Yeah.
That's exactly what he did, and like, even after I asked him the question, and we've spoken, and we're on good terms, but like the thing was, like, he's like, dude, imagine if I just played ball. I'd have my own HBO show. I'd have, or whatever. Like the opportunities would be grand. Nobody wants to report, oh, this is bullshit. You're getting wool pulled over your eyes.
And the option of that, just that option existed, speaks volumes, right? There is a narrative out there, and that's being pushed in. True. Who's pushing it and why? And you got to consider that with everything you look at, But like you mentioned, he had that feeling like you had with the Japanese airline, but he took it and used it, and he learned from it, right? And that's
and that's exactly what we've tried to do.
It does suck for a minute.
With every interview. Look, man, I mean, like, if I'd be lying to you if I said that my Patreon members withered, and especially my super chats withered. I think partly because a lot of people were shaming my fans for donating super chats to my show.
It's ridiculous.
And it was because the narrative, not that the narrative didn't change, just the questions they didn't like were asked, and so therefore I am now shunned. Like, there was a meme, was it Uplifting Tweets, who put like another list out today? And Rather Be Squidding was on there, and he said, I think that like it was something like, once ruined a once prominently good show. Like Rather Be Squidding is the guy that destroyed my show.
On the other hand, though, Lou, I mean, your subscribers are better than ever. You're getting thousands of views. You have more views than ever.
Through the roof.
It's a very vocal minority on Twitter that's kind of trying to shame you and trying to make you out to be the bad guy. And they're very vocal, but it's a very small, ultimately, part of the community, I think, thankfully.
Yeah, but that small vocal community can still make people feel shame and guilt and whatever, and influence people, to hate things that they shouldn't hate. Like, and
I don't know how I keep getting added to these lists.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, you and Miller had a little scuffle, little.
I always do with him.
You guys. It's interesting. We should have a debate between you guys, because I feel like it would be fun. It would be a fun discussion. Like, it would be a really, like, I think both sides would put on some really good points on the table.
That would need a moderator, though, so he doesn't keep putting words in my mouth.
Yeah, I'm teasing a little bit. We could be moderate. Yeah, we'll be here. We'll be here.
No,
we'll
keep it in good fun.
Miller. Yeah, dude, he's a good guy, and he's really he's really sharp, really smart dude. And he's on top of the legislative aspect of this, and I'm still, and even with all of that, I still feel like, from a legislative standpoint, this is now out of the hands of that narrative. It's a new narrative now. What that means, only time will tell.
Another one, but
only time will tell. But there's for sure going to be another narrative. We're just going to have to, But the thing is now is that narrative is, I think, on some level beholden to us.
Sure. Be
you
open
know,
minded, but require compelling evidence to believe what you hear.
there
Right?
you go.
Be
Anyway,
open to
boys,
everything.
this was a great conversation. I'm glad we got to talk about Green Street, and yeah, I'll share a show.
Hear the show. It's so good.
I'll share. It's too
good.
good. It's too good. Like I was gonna say, you know, I know he's a lightning rod, but damn, nobody can say he's not good at this.
No, I'm
He's
sure
really
people
good
think
at this.
I'm a lightning rod. Some corner of Twitter.
Yeah, of course, for sure.
Who
For
cares?
sure. We're all lightning rods. Anyway, you guys, thanks for hanging out in the first UCR overtime, and Nick for covering for Jane. That was really cool of you, man. Appreciate it. And I feel bad for Jane. I hope you feel better, my lady. I didn't. Yeah. Anyway, Bradley, you got anything coming up?
Yeah, still looking at undersea stuff and whales and dolphins and how maybe that might relate to these bills. So yeah, keep track. I'd rather be squidding.
If we could figure out what dolphins are saying, they could give some answers on these underwater phenomena.
Yeah, they'd know better than anyone.
They would know better than anyone. They definitely would know.
Right.
Nick, what are you guys working on over there at Invisible Night School?
TheInvisibleNightSchool.com. Keep an eye out. I think we're releasing something about once a week there, and keep your eye out for Twitter Spaces. I think we intend on hosting quite a few more of those, maybe with some guests along with it, including maybe Rather, right? We were talking about that a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Join us.
Yeah,
join
you guys
us.
don't want me there. I'm the least
bring
scientific
questions.
out of everybody.
If I said anything stupid today, come and tell me. So.
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody said anything stupid today. Maybe I did. I don't know. Rather, you think I'm going to?
Who knows?
There's only 100 people.
Yeah.
There was only 100 people in the show today. I think I'll be all right. What else, dude? Tomorrow Nope comes out, so we're gonna be reviewing that. I'm watching it tomorrow morning with the lady at the movies.
Very nice.
And then we're gonna do a review with Rather. Who else is coming? Rather, Ryan Sprague will be there, and Tupacabra will be there. So that'll be a fun review. So don't miss that Saturday night, 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So be there, be square. That's it. Later, guys. Thanks for hanging out.
Later.
Peace.